Hellos! Welcome to Emerald Lake. Hello, Silent Storm. I'll read a story for you very soon. Just as we start in saying hello. Yes, Dumda, what are you doing up quite this early? You have started the stream with us. That's awesome for you to finally see the starts. But I hope you've gotten enough sleep, friend. I'm just finishing things, making sure they're organized, because I felt very unorganized for no good reason. You think so? Well, we'll find out if you're starting to feel too sleepy later. Alright. Hello. You is wide awake now. That's good. Okay. Well, my first story I was going to do is the 40 Thieves. If we'd like to just jump right into it, I'll get started with the 40 Thieves. Here we go. In a town in Persia, there dwelt two brothers. Thank you, Silent Storm. In a town in Persia, there dwelt two brothers, one named Qasim, the other Ali Baba. Qasim was married to a rich wife and lived in plenty, while Ali Baba had to maintain his wife and children by cutting wood in a neighboring forest and selling it to the town. One day when Ali Baba was in the forest, he saw a troop of men on horseback coming toward him in a cloud of dust. He was afraid they were robbers and climbed into a tree for safety. When they came up to him, they dismounted. He counted 40 of them. They unbridled their horses and tied them to the trees. The finest man among them, whom Ali Baba took to be their captain, went a little way among some bushes and said, "Open sesame." And this is so funny. Ooh, yes, for sure you can make a request. This isn't a terribly long story either, so it'll be good. But anyway, he says open sesame, and then there's a notation in this story, and it has it just below this paragraph, and it says, after open sesame, "Sesame is a kind of grain." That's all it explained. That's great. Doesn't explain that the saying meaning anything. Nah, why bother? So plainly, that Ali Baba heard him, the open sesame thing. A door opened in the rocks, and having made the troop go in, he followed them. Oh, and the door shut again of itself. They stayed some time inside, and Ali Baba, fearing they might come out and catch him, was forced to sit patiently in the tree. At last the door opened again, and the 40 thieves came out. Open says me. Ah, that's cute. Yeah. The thieves came out. As the captain went in last, he came out first, and made them all pass by him. He then closed the door, saying, "Shut, sesame." Every man bridled his horse and mounted. The captain put himself at their head, and they returned as they came. Pass the foot. Okay. Then Ali Baba climbed down, and he went to the door concealed among the bushes and said, "Open sesame," and it flew open. Ali Baba, who expected a dull, dismal place, was greatly surprised to find it large and well lighted, hollowed by the hand of man in the form of a vault, which received the light from an opening in the ceiling. "Hello, Turtle Boy." "Hi, hi." He saw rich bales of merchandise, silk, stuffed brocades, all piled together, and gold and silver in heaps, and money in leather purses. He went in and shut the door behind him. He did not look at the silver, but brought out as many bags of gold as he thought his asses, which were browsing outside, could carry. He loaded them with the bags and hid it all with bundles. If you were here for a previous story, you'd know that these old stories like to say a different word, but I like to substitute it because I don't want anyone misunderstanding these particular words. Oh, how meanings to words change over time. Anyway, he hid it all with bundles. Using the words, "Shut sesame," he closed the door and went home. Then he drove his asses into the yard, shut the gates, carried the money bags to his wife. Yes, ass, mule, or donkey, whatever, but that one I'm fine to be misunderstood about. Anyway, shut the gates, carried the money bags to his wife, and emptied them out before her. He bade her keep the secret, and he would go and bury the gold. "Let me first measure it," said his wife. "I will go borrow a measure from someone, while you dig the hole." So she ran to the wife of Cassim and borrowed a measure. Knowing Ali Baba's poverty, the sister was curious to find out what sort of grain his wife wished to measure, and artfully put some suet at the bottom of the measure. Ali Baba's wife went home and set the measure on the heap of gold and filled it and emptied it often, to her great content. She then carried it back to her sister without noticing that a piece of gold was sticking to it, which Cassim's wife perceived directly her back was turned. As soon as her back was turned, she grew very curious and said to Cassim when he came home, "Cassim, your brother is richer than you. He does not count his money, he measured it." He begged her to explain this riddle, which she did by showing him the piece of money and telling him where she found it. Then Cassim grew so envious that he could not sleep, and went to his brother in the morning before sunrise. "Ali Baba," he said, showing him the gold piece, "you pretend to be poor, and yet you measure gold." By this Ali Baba perceived that, through his wife's folly, Cassim and his wife knew their secret. So he confessed all and offered Cassim a share. "That I expect," said Cassim, "but I must know where to find the treasure. Otherwise, I will discover all and you will lose all." Ali Baba, more out of kindness than fear, told him of the cave, and the very words to use. Cassim left Ali Baba, meaning to beforehand with him and get the treasure for himself. So he is still going to take it all for himself anyway. He rose early next morning and set out with 10 mules loaded with great chests. He soon found the place and the door in the rock. He said, "Open sesame," and the door opened and shut behind him. He could have feasted his eyes all day on the treasures, but he now hastened to gather together as much of it as possible. But when he was ready to go, he could not remember what to say for thinking of his great riches. Instead of sesame, he said, "Open barley," and the door remained fast. He named several different sorts of grain, all but the right one, and the door still stuck fast. He was so frightened at the danger he was in that he had as much forgotten the word as if he had never heard it. About noon, the robbers returned to their cave and saw Cassim's mules roving about with the great chests on their backs. This gave them alarm. They drew their sabers and went to the door, which opened on their captain, saying, "Open sesame." Cassim, who had heard the trampling of their horses' feet, resolved to sell his life dearly, so when the door opened he leapt out and threw the captain down. In vain, however, for the robbers with their sabers soon killed him. On entering the cave they saw all the bags laid ready, and could not imagine how anyone had got in without knowing their secret. They cut Kasim's body into 4 quarters, oh my goodness, and nailed them up inside the cave in order to frighten anyone who should venture in, and went away in search of more treasure. Ugh. Yeah, I get it. Do, do, do. As night drew on, Kasim's wife grew very uneasy and ran to her brother-in-law. Oh, you're good. And told him where her husband had gone. Yeah, that's why I'm like, I'm more focused on the dark story. Ali Baba did his best to comfort her and set out to the forest in search of Kasim. The first thing he saw on entering the cave was his dead brother. Full of horror, he put the body on one of his asses and bags of gold on the other 2, and covering all with some bundles, returned home. He drove the 2 asses laden with gold into his own yard, and led the other to Kasim's house. The door was opened by the slave Morgiana, whom he knew to be both brave and cunning. Unloading the ass, he said to her, "This is the body of your master who has been murdered, but whom we must bury as though he had died in his bed. I will speak with you again, but now tell your mistress I am home." The wife of Kasim, on learning the fate of her husband, broke out into cries and tears, but Ali Baba offered to take her to live with him and his wife if she would promise to keep his counsel and leave everything to Morgiana, whereupon she agreed and dried her eyes. Morgiana, meanwhile, sought an apothecary and asked him for some lozenges. "My poor master," she said, "can neither eat nor speak, and no one knows what his distemper is." She carried home the lozenges and returned next day weeping, and asked for an essence only given to those just about to die. Thus, in the evening, no one was surprised to hear the wretched shrieks and cries of Kasim's wife and Morgiana, telling everyone that Kasim was dead. The next day after, Morgiana went to an old cobbler near the gates of the town, who opened his stall early, put a piece in his hand, and bade him follow her with his needle and thread. Having bound his eyes with a handkerchief, she took him to the room where the body lay, pulled off the bandage, and bade him sew the quarters together, after which she covered his eyes again and led him home. Then they buried Kasim, and Morgiana, his slave, followed him to the grave, weeping and tearing her hair, while Kasim's wife stayed at home, uttering lamentable cries. Next day she went to live with Ali Baba, who gave Kasim's shop to his eldest son. All of this just to make sure no one could trace the thieving back to them, which is a very wise thing to do. Alright. The 40 thieves, on their return to the cave, were much astonished to find Kasim's body gone and some of their money bags. "We are certainly discovered," said the captain, "and shall be undone if we cannot find out who it is that knows our secret. 2 men must have known it. We have killed one, and we must now find the other. To this end, one of you who is bold and artful must go into the city dressed as a traveler and discover whom we have killed, and whether men talk of the strange manner of his death. If the messenger fails, he must lose his life, lest we be betrayed." One of the 3 thieves started up and offered to do this, and after the rest had highly commended him for his bravery, he disguised himself, and happened to enter the town at daybreak, just by Baba Mustafa's stall. So this would be the brother's son, I think. The thief bade him good day, saying, "Honest man, how can you possibly see to stitch at your age?" Oh no, this is the cobbler. "Old as I am," replied the cobbler, "I have very good eyes. And will you believe me when I tell you that I sewed a dead body together in a place where I had less light than I have now?" Don't do that. Hey, Cajun Nightwind, I saw your message that you had missed us coming back, or missed us before we ended that stream, so I'm glad you're back here. But oh no, this cobbler is letting the cat out of the bag. Don't do that. Okay. The robber was overjoyed at his good fortune, and giving him a piece of gold, desired to be shown the house where he stitched up the dead body. Yeah. They tried to be secret about it. They didn't let him see where he went, but anyway. At first, Mustafa refused, saying that he had been blindfolded, but when the robber gave him another piece of gold, he began to think he might remember the turnings if blindfolded as before. All right. This means succeeded. The robber partly led him and was partly guided by him right in front of Kasim's house, the door of which the robber marked with a piece of chalk. Then, well pleased, he bade farewell to Baba Mustafa and returned to the forest. By and by, Morgiana, going out, saw the mark the robber had made, quickly guessed that some mischief was brewing, and fetching a piece of chalk, marked 2 or 3 doors on each side, without saying anything to her master or mistress. Thank goodness Morgiana is smart here, you know? Okay. The thief, meantime, told his comrades of this discovery. The captain thanked him and bade him show him to the house he had marked. But when they came to it, they saw 5 or 6 more houses were chalked in the same manner. The guide was so confounded that he knew not what answer to make, and when they returned, he was at once beheaded for having failed. Another robber was dispatched, and having won over Baba Mustafa, marked the house in red chalk, but Morgiana began again, too clever for them. The second messenger was put to death also. The captain now resolved to go himself, but wiser than the others, he did not mark the house, but looked at it so closely that he could not fail to remember it. He returned and ordered his men to go into the neighboring villages and buy 19 mules and 38 leather jars, all empty except one, which was full of oil. The captain put one of his men, fully armed, into each, rubbing the outside of the jars with oil from the full vessel. Then the 19 mules were loaded with 37 robbers in jars, and the jar of oil, and reached the town by dusk. The captain stopped his mules in front of Ali Baba's house and said to Ali Baba, who was sitting outside for coolness, "I have brought some oil from a distance to sell at tomorrow's market, but it is now so late that I know not where to pass the night, unless you will do me the favor to take me in." Though Ali Baba had seen the captain of the robbers in the forest, he did not recognize him in the disguise of an oil merchant. He bade him welcome, opened his gates for the mules to enter, and went to Morgiana to bid her prepare a bed and supper for his guest. He brought the stranger into his hall, and after they had supped, went again to speak to Morgiana in the kitchen, while the captain went into the yard under the pretense of seeing after his mules, but really to tell his men what to do. Beginning at the first jar and ending at the last, he said to each man, "As soon as I throw some stones from the window of the chamber where I lie, cut the jars open with your knives and come out, and I will be with you in a trice." He returned to the house, and Morgiana led him to his chamber. She then told Abdallah, her fellow slave, to set on the pot to make some broth for her master, who had gone to bed. Meanwhile, her lamp went out, and she had no more oil in the house. "Do not be uneasy," said Abdallah. "Go into the yard and take some out of one of those jars." Oh no. Morgiana thanked him for his advice. Again, that's the slave that gave the advice. Took the oil pot and went into the yard. When she came to the first jar, the robber inside said softly, "Is it time?" Any other slave but Morgiana, on finding a man in the jar instead of the oil she wanted, would have screamed and made a noise, but she, knowing the danger her master was in, bethought herself of a plan and answered quietly, "Not yet, but presently." She went to all the jars, giving the same answer, till she came to the jar of oil. She now saw that her master, thinking to entertain an oil merchant, had led 38 robbers into his house. She filled her oil pot, went back to the kitchen, and, having lit her lamp, went again to the oil jar and filled a large kettle full of oil. When it boiled, she went and poured enough oil into every jar to stifle and kill the robber inside. Ooh, smart little slave. When this brave deed was done, she went back to the kitchen, put out the fire and the lamp, and waited to see what would happen. In a quarter of an hour, the captain of the robbers got up, and opened the window. As all seemed quiet, he threw down some little pebbles, which hit the jars. He listened, and as none of his men seemed to stir, he grew uneasy, and went down into the yard. Going to the first jar and saying, "Are you asleep?" he smelt the hot boiled oil, and knew at once that his plot to murder Ali Baba and his household had been discovered. He found all the gang was dead, and missing the oil out of the last jar, became aware of the manner of their death. He then forced the lock of a door leading into the garden, and climbing over several walls made his escape. Morgiana heard and saw all this, and rejoicing at her success, went to bed and fell asleep. Yeah, very brutal. So clever. I'm loving Morgiana. At daybreak, Ali Baba arose, and seeing the oil jars still there, asked why the merchant had not gone with his mules. Morgiana bade him look in the first jar and see if there was any oil. Seeing a man, he started back in terror. "Have no fear," said Morgiana. "The man cannot harm you. He is dead." Ali Baba, when he had recovered somewhat from his astonishment, asked what had become of the merchant. "Merchant," said she, "he is no more a merchant than I am." And she told him the whole story, assuring him that it was a plot of the robbers of the forest, of whom only 3 were left. She doesn't know 2 had died. 3 were left, and that the white and red chalk marks had something to do with it. Ali Baba at once gave Morgiana her freedom. She earned it ages ago, honestly, but yeah, she definitely needs it now. You cannot be keeping this person like this. You shouldn't in the first place, but like, you have to give her her due. Gave her freedom, saying that he owed her his life. Then they buried the bodies in Ali Baba's garden, while the mules were sold in the market to buy his slaves. The captain returned to his lonely cave, which seemed frightful to him without his companions, and firmly resolved to avenge them by killing Ali Baba. He dressed himself carefully and went into the town, where he took lodgings in an inn. In the course of a great many journeys to the forest, he carried away many rich stuff and much fine linen, and set up a shop opposite that of Ali Baba's son. He called himself Khoja Hassan, and as he was both civil and well dressed, he soon made friends with Ali Baba's son, and through him with Ali Baba, whom he was continually asking to sup with him. Okay, yeah, he made friends with the son through him, also with Ali Baba. Okay. Ali Baba, wishing to return his kindness, invited him into his house and received him smiling, thanking him much for his kindness to his son. When the merchant was about to take his leave, Ali Baba stopped him, saying, "Where are you going, sir, in such haste? Will you not stay and sup with me?" The merchant refused, saying that he had a reason, and on Ali Baba's asking him what it was, he replied, "It is, sir, that I can eat no victuals that have any salt in them." So no food with salt. "If that is all," said Ali Baba, "let me tell you that there shall be no salt in either the meat or the bread that we eat tonight." He went to give this order to Morgiana, who was much surprised. "Who is this man," she said, "who eats no salt with his meat?" "He is an honest man, Morgiana," returned her master. "Therefore do as I bid you." But we know that he's not, so come on, Morgiana, step in as you always do, please. But she could not withstand a desire to see this strange man, so she helped Abdallah to carry up the dishes, and saw in a moment the Khoja Hassan was the robber captain, and carried a dagger under his garment. "I am not surprised," she said to herself, "that this wicked man who intends to kill my master will eat no salt with him, but I will hinder his plans." She sent up the supper by Abdallah, while she made ready for one of the boldest acts that could be thought on. When the dessert had been served, Khoja Hassan was left alone with Ali Baba and his son, whom he thought to make drunk and then to murder them. Morgiana, meanwhile, put on a headdress like a dancing girl's and clasped a girdle around her waist, from which hung a dagger with a silver hilt, and said to Abdallah, "Take your tabor, and let us go and divert our master and his guest." Abdallah took his tabor and played before Morgiana until they came to the door, where Abdallah stopped playing and Morgiana made a low curtsy. "Come in, Morgiana," said Ali Baba, "and let Khoja Hassan see what you can do." And turning to Khoja Hassan, he said, "She's my slave and my housekeeper." Khoja Hassan was by no means pleased, for he feared that his chance of killing Ali Baba was gone for the present, but he pretended great eagerness to see Morgiana, and Abdallah began to play and Morgiana to dance. After she had performed several dances, she drew her dagger and made passes with it, sometimes pointing it at her own breast, sometimes at her master's, as if it were part of the dance. Suddenly, out of breath, she snatched the tabor from Abdallah with her left hand, and holding the dagger in her right hand, held out the tabor to her master. Ali Baba and his son put a piece of gold into it, and Khoja Hassan, seeing that she was coming to him, pulled out his purse to make her a present. But while he was putting his hand to it, Morgiana plunged the dagger into his heart. "Unhappy girl," cried Ali Baba and his son, "what have you done to ruin us?" "It was to preserve you, master, not to ruin you," answered Morgiana. "See here," opening the false merchant's garment and showing the dagger. "See what an enemy you have entertained. Remember, he would eat no salt with you. And what more would you have? Look at him. He is both the false oil merchant and the captain of the 40 Thieves. I don't know what the not eating salt is about, like what that kind of nods to. I don't know what that is supposed to be for." Ali Baba was so grateful to Morgiana for thus saving his life that he offered her to his son in marriage, who readily consented. Well, I mean, he did just watch her do a sexy dance, so... And a few days after, the wedding was celebrated with greatest splendor. At the end of a year, Ali Baba, hearing nothing of the two remaining robbers, judged they were dead, and set out to the cave. The door opened on his saying, "Open sesame." He went in and saw that nobody had been there since the captain left it. He brought away as much gold as he could carry and returned to town. He told his son of the secret cave, which his son handed down in turn, so the children and grandchildren of Ali Baba were rich to the end of their lives. It was... So the reason it was used in meats is, like, especially then when you don't, like, theoretically when it was as old as it was, you salted a meat to make sure that it could last, so that it was safe to eat. So it had to be actually kind of pretty plentiful. And you had different kinds of salts. I don't think it was commodity. Yeah. I don't think it was commodity. I think it was a little bit something else, but maybe I'm wrong. Yes, but that is also Greece. and Roman areas. Like, this isn't quite the same area. I don't know. Maybe it is salt rare over there, but I don't know. Either way, they got their happy ending, and the end to the 40 Thieves. That's that. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a saltier area, maybe not. Who knows? Alright, well, that's the end of that story. I believe you had a request earlier, Dumdo. this is the time. Do you remember? Hmm? I'm not entirely sure what you're saying with that. Ow, he's ho about the oldest northern fairy tale out there. Okay, you think the oldest northern fairy tale is Siegfried the Dragon Slayer? Oldest one we know so far, maybe? He's how about the oldest northern fairy tale out there? Still a tiny bit lost. Yeah, it's auto mod and also it's just a little bit not that. Siegfried Dragon Slayer. Other times called Sigurd. 11th century. I'm pretty sure there are some older. Like it's one of those that's pretty old, but I think there are older. Okay, will do. Siegfried or Sigurd, the Dragon Slayer is an old Norse story. Here it's saying that it's dating from the 11th century. But I am certain that there are older. I'm pretty certain. I probably shouldn't be the one to say it. I think there are older. But I couldn't tell you what. I would say that I would have thought that or maybe there's only like little pieces or vague understandings of what the older ones are, more than like the actual stories that we could read, kind of a thing. Anyway. I will wait only a little bit longer for Dumda to return. After that, we'll read The Wonderful Sheep. Let's see what that one is. I was saying that we would wait for you to get back, and for you to finish, finish what your request was. 'Cause usually it's like a question, or not just that you think that a thing is it, but now that you're here, what was it you were going to ask at the start of the story? Oh, you'd like to request that one. Okay. What am I doing? Okay. I just have the Wikipedia article that pops up first, but maybe I can find it in this one. They've got a pretty great collection here. I wouldn't be surprised if they have something. It would be under Norse that's an option. No. We have Slavic, Romantic, Germanic, Celtic for that corner. I don't think. Well, we can try and see. Let's check Germanic and then Celtic. I don't think either's gonna be it. Oh, never mind, maybe. This one is fully Scandinavian, but it doesn't seem to have that. Germany, German forests, English, more English, English, Dutch, Norwegian. Ah, what is your native language then? And Swedish. I don't think it will be in the Swedish. Nope. Yeah, then I'll have to do more looking for the quick English find. But I've got the Wikipedia article, and hopefully I find a good place to read the full thing from there. But what is... fair enough, okay. No, I absolutely understand it. There's a couple of adaptations of the legend listed down here, and it's talking about it being part of Wagner's cycle. That's interesting. It's just the different stories it's been put into. That's interesting. I'll have to pull it up for another night of streams. Yeah. Okay. Alright. I do like the recommendations like that though. Like we did the what was that one called? It was an introduction to human death from Reddit when Fetster asked for that. Well, of course. Happy to do what you guys request, as long as it's not something I'm uncomfortable with, or is unkind or something like that. But I don't think any of you would do that. So far you're all lovely. This is, yes, wonderful sheep. Wonderful sheep. I believe in the history of Whittington story, we had somebody that had that little chain of sheep at one point. I forget who posted that one. So I was kind of wondering if we could have most of those same folks around, that then I would start this. True. But this is the thing, if you request it, I'll be clearer. Also, like I've said that I'm going to be reading these stories, and then I'm going to be branching out to other things, and I think it'll be clearer at that point. Yeah. But okay. I was talking about the sheep, because this is a wonderful sheep story. If someone had that, or if you saw who that sheep emote was, I thought it was funny that we've got this now. Alright, The Wonderful Sheep. Once upon a time, in the days when the fairies lived, there was a king who had 3 daughters, who were all young and clever and beautiful, but the youngest of the 3, who was called Miranda, was the prettiest and the most beloved. Thank you. Well, I'm a try, but I'm still learning whatever does better still with you guys. Oh, actually, you know what I realized? There's going to need to be an ad soon that would almost definitely interrupt this story. So I'm going to back up and put the ad in now so that I can move on to the story after so that nobody gets interrupted. I'll do that real quickly, and then we'll be safe to just keep reading. Alright, here goes. For those of you that don't see the ad, I'm still just here. I won't just be quiet the whole 30 seconds. But, hi. Alright. We have another story that starts off with there's this peoples that have multiple kids, but the youngest is the prettiest and the most important, so here it goes. They're always doing that. All the youngest children out there feeling so special, I bet. Alright, then here we go. Now that we have that ad out of the way. Sorry, folks, for the way those have to happen. Ooh. Okay. So now we've learned that Dumda is one of the youngest. One of those folks. Alright. Once upon a time, in the days when the fairies lived, there was a king who had 3 daughters who were all young and clever and beautiful. But the youngest of the 3 who was called Miranda, was the prettiest and the most beloved. The king, her father, gave her more dresses and jewels in a month than he gave the others in a year. Favoritism. Obvious favoritism. How rude. But she was so generous that she shared everything with her sisters, and they were all as happy and as fond of one another as they could be. Or she learned very early that if things continued the way her dad did it, she was going to be everybody else's least favorite and cause a bunch of issues. Probably that she learned. Like, the other sisters would be picking up on that and hating her for it if she didn't. Now, the king had some quarrelsome neighbors who, tired of leaving him in peace, began to make war upon him so fiercely that he feared he would be altogether beaten if he did not make an effort to defend himself. So he collected a great army and set off to fight them, leaving the princesses with their governesses in a castle where news of the war was brought every day, sometimes that the king had taken a town or won a battle, and at last that he had altogether overcome his enemies and chased them out of his kingdom, and was coming back to the castle as quickly as possible to see his dear little Miranda, whom he loved so much. And the others, right? Come on, stop being an ass, Dad. The 3 princesses put on dresses of satin, which they had made on purpose for this great occasion. 1 green, 1 blue, and the 3rd white. Their jewels were the same colors. The eldest wore emeralds, the second wore turquoises, and the youngest diamonds, and thus adorned, they went to meet the king, singing verses which they had composed about his victories. When he saw them all so beautiful and so gay, he embraced them tenderly, but gave Miranda more kisses than either of the others. Presently a splendid banquet was served, and the king and his daughters sat down to it. And as he always thought that there was some special meaning in everything, He said to the eldest, "Tell me why you have chosen a green dress." "Sire," she answered, "having heard of your victories, I thought that green would signify my joy and the hope of your speedy return." "That is a very good answer," said the king. "And you, my daughter," he continued, "why did you take a blue dress?" "Sire," said the princess, "to show that we constantly hoped for your success, and that the sight of you is as welcome to me as the sky with its most beautiful stars." "Why," said the king, "your wise answers astonish me. And you, Miranda, what made you dress yourself all in white?" "Because, sire," she answered, "white suits me better than anything else." "What?" said the king angrily. "Was that all you thought of, vain child?" "I thought you would be pleased with me," said the princess. "That was all." I mean, considering how much he praised her for, no reason more than the others, kind of reasonable that this would be the response. If this story starts to blame her, I'm gonna blame Dad. Gonna blame the king. The king, who loved her, was satisfied with this. Okay. And even pretended to be pleased that she had not told him all her reasons at first. "Oh? And now," said he, "as I have supped well, and it is not time yet to go to bed, tell me what you dreamed last night." The eldest said she had dreamed that he bought her a dress, and the precious stones and gold embroidery on it were brighter than the sun. The dream of the second was that the king had brought her a spinning wheel and a distaff, that she might spin him some shirts. But the youngest said, "I dreamed that my second sister was to be married, and on her wedding day you, my father, held a golden ewer and said, 'Come, Miranda, and I will hold the water that you may dip your hands in it.'" The king was very angry indeed when he heard this dream, and frowned horribly. I don't know why. I don't know what the significance of the water in the hands thing is, but it's kind of cool to be hoping that your sister gets her wedding day soon. I don't know. Why are you mad, Dad? Jeez. He made such an ugly face that everyone knew how angry he was, and he got up and went off to bed in a great hurry, but he could not forget his daughter's dream. "Does the proud girl wish to make me her slave? Okay, that's why," he said to himself. "I am not surprised at her choosing to dress herself in white satin without a thought of me. She does not think me worthy of her consideration, but I will soon put an end to her pretensions." He rose in a fury, and although it was not yet daylight, he sent for the captain of his bodyguard and said to him, "You have heard the Princess Miranda's dream. I consider that it means strange things against me. Therefore, I order you to take her away into the forest and kill her, and that I may be sure it is done, you must bring me her heart and her tongue. If you attempt to deceive me, you shall be put to death." What the heck? Oh my gosh, this is just... hit a button. What the heck, Dad? Why? I'm thinking of the Snow White stuff, and that story is how that goes together, but all she did was have a dream, and you're ready to kill her after you were praising her so much. I'm just seeing all kinds of women are object things, and who cares, we'll just throw it away kind of moments, but oh well. Okay, moving on. The captain of the guard was very much astonished when he heard this barbarous order. But he did not dare to contradict the king for fear of making him still more angry, or causing him to send someone else. So he answered that he would fetch the princess and do as the king had said. When he went to her room, they would hardly let him in, it was so early. But he said that the king had sent for Miranda, and she got up quickly and came out. A little black girl called Patipata held up her train, and her pet monkey and her little dog ran after her. The monkey was called Grabusian, and the little dog Tintin. The little dog is called Tintin? The captain of the guard begged Miranda to come down into the garden where the king was enjoying the fresh air, and when they got there he pretended to search for him, but as he was not to be found he said, "No doubt his majesty has strolled into the forest," and he opened the little door that led to it, and they went through. By this time the daylight had begun to appear, and the princess, looking at her conductor, saw that he had tears in his eyes and seemed too sad to speak. "What is the matter?" she said in the kindest way. You seem very sorrowful." "Alas, princess," he answered, "who would not be sorrowful who was ordered to do such a terrible thing as I am? The king has commanded me to kill you here and carry your heart and your tongue to him, and if I disobey, I shall lose my life." The poor princess was terrified. She grew very pale and began to cry softly. Looking up at the captain of the guard with her beautiful eyes, she said gently, "Will you really have the heart to kill me? I have never done you any harm, and have always spoken well of you to the king. If I had deserved my father's anger, I would suffer without a murmur, but alas, he is unjust to complain of me, when I have always treated him with love and respect." "Fear nothing, princess," said the captain of the guard. "I would far rather die myself than hurt you, but even if I am killed, you will not be safe. We must find some way of making the king believe that you are dead." Sorry, I had to... Okay. "What can we do?" said Miranda. "Unless you take in my heart and my tongue, he will never believe you." The princess and the captain of the guard were talking so earnestly that they did not think of Patypata, but she had overheard all they said, and now came and threw herself at Miranda's feet. "Oh, don't you dare do what I think you're about to do." "Madam," said the princess, "I offer you my life. Let me be killed. I shall only be too happy to die for such a kind mistress." "Don't do it." "Why, Patypata," cried the princess, kissing her, "that would never do. Your life is as precious to me as my own, especially after such a proof of your affection as you have just given me." "Fucking right." "You are right, princess," said Grabugeon, the monkey, coming forward, "to love such a faithful slave as Patypata. She is of more use to you than I am. I offer you my tongue and my heart most willingly, especially as I wish to make a great name of myself in the goblin land." "What does that mean?" No, my little Grabugeon," replied Miranda, "I cannot bear the thought of taking your life." "Such a good little dog as I am," cried Tintin, "I could not think of letting either of you die for his mistress. If anyone is to die for her, it must be me." And then began a great dispute between Patypata, Grabugeon, and Tintin, and they came to high words until at last Grabugeon, who was quicker than the others, ran up to the nearest tree and let herself fall head first to the ground, and there she lay quite dead. "Well, all right then." "I guess that's settled." Jesus. The princess was very sorry, but as Grabugeon was really dead, yawning, she allowed the captain of the guard to take her tongue out, but alas, it was such a little one, not bigger than the princess's thumb, that they decided sorrowfully that it was of no use at all. The king would not have taken it by a moment. "I don't like where this is heading." Yeah, okay. This is awful. This is a terrible story. I hate this. Fine. None of this is technically offensive. I just don't like... Okay. "Alas, my little monkey," cried the princess, "I have lost you, and yet I am no better off than I was before." "The honor of saving your life is to be mine," interrupted Patypata, and before they could prevent her, she had picked up a knife and cut her head off in an instant. But when the captain of the guard would have taken her tongue, it turned out, and this isn't a thing, this wouldn't be true, This is just false. Absolutely bullshit, but it's olden times and they're dumbasses and racist as hell. It turned out to be quite black. No, her tongue wouldn't have been. For fuck's sake. So that would not have deceived the king either. Am I not unlucky? Cried the poor princess. I lose everything I love, and am none the better for it. If you had accepted my offer, said Tintin. Hi, DewOnTheGrass. Mornin'. We're in the middle of a kind of really awful part of this story, so forgive my annoying tone. We're gonna get to a better part soon. Hopefully, this is not a nice paragraph, not a kind piece of story. The Wonderful Sheep is an old fairy tale along with everything else, and they just did some racist bullshit, and it's still really backwards. And maybe at the end I'll give a summary of the bullshit, but I'm not impressed. That's the highlight. That's the headline here. Okay. Anyway, the little dog, Tintin. If you had accepted my offer, you would only have had me to regret, and I should have had all your gratitude. Miranda kissed her little dog, crying so bitterly that at last she could bear it no longer and turned away into the forest. Okay, so maybe the dog is alive, maybe it's not. Okay, here we go. When she looked back, the captain of the guard was gone, and she was alone except for Patipada, Grabusian, and Tintin, who lay upon the ground. Okay, so maybe Tintin did die? It's not clear what happened to the little dog. I think they might have skipped over that the dog did the same thing as the other two, but I don't know. Okay. She could not leave the place until she had buried them in a pretty little mossy grave at the foot of a tree, and she wrote their names upon the bark of the tree, and now they had all died to save her life. Yeah, okay, so pointless, all of it. And then she began to think where she could go for safety, for this forest was so close to her father's castle that she might be seen and recognized by the first passer-by, and besides that, it was full of lions and wolves, who would have snapped up a princess just as soon as a stray chicken. So she began to walk as fast as she could, but the forest was so large and the sun was so hot that she nearly died of heat and terror and fatigue. Look which way she would, there seemed to be no end to the forest. She was so frightened that she fancied every minute that she heard the king running after her to kill her. You may imagine how miserable she was, and how she cried as she went on, not knowing which path to follow, and with the thorny bushes scratching her dreadfully and tearing her pretty frock to pieces. I'm wondering what the captain of the guard did to sort this out. Ooh. Just seeing your comment. H.P. Lovecraft, for instance, this crazy stories that still, to this day, yeah, things be pretty messed up. It's clear that in this particular story, their thoughts, without consulting, ever talking, or also like there's no one looking into actual medical things at that point, they wouldn't have taken the time to notice. Everybody has the same color fucking tongue. That's not a thing. But it's one of those little like rumors and things. So they were dumbasses. Anyway, I'm wondering what the guard is going to do to fix this, because the problem is not solved. There's just 3 small dead bodies under a pretty little grave, and we're all just gonna pretend that was fine. It was a completely pointless fucking point, and I bet they are never mentioned again in this story. I bet. It's one of those, it's part of the story that's like, and this is the repetition. See, this person died, and then this person died, and this person died, and it was all for naught. Like, honestly, whatever. Okay. At last she heard the bleating of a sheep, and said to herself, "No doubt there are shepherds here with their flocks. They will show me the way to some village where I can live disguised as a peasant girl. Alas, it is not always kings and princes who are the happiest people in the world. Who could have believed that I should ever be obliged to run away and hide because of the king, for no reason at all, who wishes to kill me?" So saying, she advanced towards the place where she heard the bleating. But what was her surprise when, in a lovely little glade surrounded by trees, she saw a large sheep. Its wool was as white as snow, and its horns shone like gold. It had a garland of flowers round its neck, and strings of great pearls about its legs, and a collar of diamonds. It lay upon a bank of orange flowers, under a canopy of cloth of gold, which protected it from the heat of the sun. Nearly 100 other sheep were scattered about, not eating the grass, but some drinking coffee, lemonade, or sherbet, others eating ices, strawberries, and creams, or sweetmeats, while others again were playing games. Many of them wore golden collars with jewels, flowers, and ribbons. Miranda stopped short in amazement at this unexpected sight, and was looking in all directions for the shepherd of this surprising flock, when the beautiful sheep came bounding toward her. "Approach, lovely princess," he cried. "Have no fear of such gentle and peaceable animals as we are." "What a marvel!" cried the princess, starting back a little. "Here is a sheep that can talk. You weren't amazed by the monkey and the dog talking to you, though, when they died. But you're shocked at the sheep. Okay." Okay, oh my gosh. The very next line, they literally say that. "Your monkey and your dog could talk, madam," said he. "Are you more astonished at us than them?" That's thank you, Story, for calling me out there. "A fairy gave them the power to speak," replied Miranda, "so I was used to them." "Perhaps the same thing has happened to us," he said, smiling sheepishly. Sheepishly? When he's a sheep? We like puns. This is so silly. Okay, I hate the start of this story, but this was a good moment. Yeah, exactly. And that was the story of the wonderful sheep. The wonderful sheep that called the princess out on her bullshit and then said a pun. Oh god. DewOnTheGrass, you might be a new favorite. Oh my god, exactly. Honestly, they would have been thinking pretty much that same line of thought. Oh my god, okay. I need a sec. Okay. So the sheep is smiling sheepishly and says, "But princess, what can have led you here?" "1,000 misfortunes, sir sheep," she answered. I am the unhappiest princess in the world, and I am seeking a shelter against my father's anger." Oh. Yeah, this is, that's a whole, everybody talking about separating the artist from the art and all that sort of thing. The good news is that these stories, there's no particular artist to blame. There is a general time frame, since these are all oral histories. A little bit of whoever edited, a little bit of whoever translated, but everybody had to work together to make something awful happen in one of these stories, or something great. So as much as that's a whole like chat, that's why we chose these, because we can blame more widely instead of be particular about someone specific. "Okay, come with me, madam," said the sheep. "I offer you a hiding place which you only will know of, and where you will be mistress of everything you see." "I really cannot follow you," said Miranda, "for I am too far too tired to walk another step." Yes, fair, yeah. The sheep with the golden horns ordered that his chariot should be fetched, and a moment after appeared 6 goats harnessed to a pumpkin, which was so big that 2 people could quite well sit in it, and was all lined with cushions of velvet and down. The princess stepped into it, much amused at such a new kind of carriage. The king of the sheep took his place beside her, and the goats ran away with them at full speed, and only stopped when they reached a cavern, the entrance to which was blocked by a great stone. This the king touched with his foot, and immediately it fell down, and he invited the princess to enter without fear. Now, if she had not been so alarmed by everything that had happened, nothing could have induced her to go into this frightful cave, but she was so afraid of what might be behind her that she would have thrown herself even down a well at this moment. So without hesitation she followed the sheep, who went before her down, 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 until she thought they must come out at the other side of the world. Indeed, she was not sure that he wasn't leading her into fairyland. At last she saw before her a great plain, quite covered with all sorts of flowers, the scent of which seemed to her nicer than anything she had ever smelled before. A broad river of orange flower water flowed round it, and fountains of wine of every kind ran in all directions and made the prettiest little cascades and brooks. The plain was covered with the strangest trees. There were whole avenues where partridges, ready roasted, hung from every branch, or, if you preferred pheasants, quails, turkeys, or rabbits, you had only turned to the right hand or to the left, and you were sure to find them. In places, the air was darkened by showers of lobster patties, white puddings, sausages, tarts, and all sorts of sweetmeats, or with pieces of gold and silver, diamonds and pearls. This unusual kind of rain, and the pleasantness of the whole place, would no doubt have attracted numbers of people to it, if the king of the sheep had been a more sociable disposition, but from all accounts it is evident that he was as grave as a judge. So, I'm starting to get a Willy Wonka vibe. Here we go with this very odd sheep life, and a little bit of insane death at the start. I'm unhinged. Seeing Gene Wilder. Oh my gosh. Okay. As it was quite the nicest time of the year when Miranda arrived in this delightful land, the only place she saw was a long row of orange trees, jasmines, honeysuckles, and musk roses, and their interlacing branches made the prettiest rooms possible, which were hung with gold and silver gauze, and had great mirrors and candlesticks, and most beautiful pictures. The wonderful sheep begged that the princess would consider herself queen over all that she saw, and assured her that, though for some years he had been very sad and in great trouble, she had it in her power to make him forget all his grief. "You are so kind and generous, noble sheep," said the princess, "that I cannot thank you enough. But I must confess that all I see here seems to me so extraordinary that I don't know what to think of it." As she spoke, a band of lovely fairies came up and offered her amber baskets full of fruit, but when she held out her hands to them, they glided away, and she could feel nothing when she tried to touch them. "Oh," she cried, "what can they be? Whom am I with? And she began to cry. At this instant the king of the sheep came back to her, and was so distracted to find her in tears that he could have torn his wool. "What is the matter, lovely princess?" he cried. "Has anyone failed to treat you with due respect?" "Oh no," said Miranda, "only I am not used to living with sprites and with sheep that talk, and everything here frightens me. It was very kind of you to bring me to this place, but I shall be even more grateful to you if you will take me up to the world again." "Do not be afraid," said the wonderful sheep. "I entreat you to have patience, and listen to the story of my misfortunes. I was once a king, and my kingdom was the most splendid in the world. My subjects loved me. My neighbors envied and feared me. I was respected by everyone, and it was said that no king ever deserved it more. I was very fond of hunting, and one day, while chasing a stag, I left my attendants far behind. Suddenly, I saw the animal leap into a pool of water. Lying sheep. Well, we'll find out. I leaped into a pool of water, and I rashly urged my horse to follow it. But before we had gone many steps, I felt an extraordinary heat. Instead of the coolness of the water, the pond dried up. A great gulf opened before me, out of which flames of fire shot up, and I fell helplessly to the bottom of a precipice. What in the heck? How does that happen? Reading your comments, Cage Night Wind. Yes. Oh, and I just saw Down with the Monarchy because it quickly went in with the other stuff. There's so many monarchies in this story that it's kind of hard to say that because like all of them are monarchy and a couple of them have been kind of fun. But yeah, all right. He ended up at the bottom of a precipice after water turning dry and then flames and everything. I gave myself up for lost, but presently a voice said, "Ungrateful prince, even this fire is hardly enough to warm your cold heart." "Who complains of my coldness in this dismal place?" I cried. Again, this is the sheep explaining. "An unhappy being who loves you hopelessly," replied the voice. And at the same moment the flames began to flicker and cease to burn, and I saw a fairy whom I had known as long as I could remember, and whose ugliness had always horrified me. She was leaning upon the arm of a most beautiful young girl who wore chains of gold on her wrists and was evidently her slave. "Why, Ragot," I said, for that was the fairy's name. "What is the meaning of all this? Is it by your orders that I am here?" "And whose fault is it," she answered, "that you have never understood me until now? Must a powerful fairy like myself condescend to explain her doings to you who are no better than an ant by comparison, though you think yourself a great king?" "Call me what you like," I said impatiently, "but what is it that you want? My crown, or my cities, or my treasures?" "Treasures," said the fairy disdainfully. If I chose, I could make any one of my scullions richer and more powerful than you. I do not want your treasures, but," she added softly, "if you will give me your heart, if you will marry me, I will add 20 kingdoms to the one you have already. You shall have 100 castles full of gold and 500 full of silver, and in short, anything you like to ask me for." "Madame Ragot," said I, "when one is at the bottom of a pit where one has fully expected to be roasted alive, it is impossible to think of asking such a charming person as you are to marry one. I beg that you will set me at liberty, and then I shall hope to answer you fittingly." "Ah," said she, "if you really love me, you could not care where you were, a cave, a wood, a foxhole, a desert, would please you equally well. Do you not think that you can deceive me? You fancy you are going to escape, but I assure you that you are going to stay here, and the first thing I shall give you to do will be to keep my sheep. They are very good company, and speak quite as well as you do." I'm going to interrupt his story of this story a moment because this has happened a couple of times in these stories where someone's like, like where they think they're being wise, like saying, "You will tell me that you love me here," and the thing is like, the fact that you are forcing them to tell you that while they're still in danger, pretty obvious that it's not about them loving you. It's what? Oh, okay, good night, Death Noah. Have a good rest. Yeah, exactly, Dimda. And the same to the reply to Cage Night. Hope to see you another stream, Death Noah. Sleep well. Okay, so the sheep will talk as well as you do. You just have to look after them. And as she spoke, she advanced and led me, aka Sheepman, to this plain where we now stand, and showed me her flock, but I paid little attention to it or to her. To tell the truth, I was so lost in admiration of her beautiful slave that I forgot everything else, and the cruel Ragot, perceiving this, turned upon her so furious and terrible a look that she fell lifeless to the ground. At this dreadful sight I drew my sword and rushed at Ragot, and should certainly have cut off her head had she not by her magic arts chained me to the spot on which I stood. All my efforts to move were useless, and at last, when I threw myself down on the ground in despair, she said to me with a scornful smile, "I intend to make you feel my power. It seems that you are a lion at present. I mean to make you a sheep." Yeah, I can kind of see that. It's just the sort of thing of, yeah, like, folks, you can't ask someone to do that and expect them to actually love you or to answer in that moment when they are in danger, and then to actually love you when, like, it's really not a question of love or die. Like, it's follow my orders or die. It's ridiculous. Okay. So saying, she touched me with her wand, and I became what you see. I did not lose the power of speech or of feeling the misery of my present state. For 5 years, she had said, you shall be a sheep. Oh, those irrational, ugly women, you say. Yeah, pretty much. Interesting that that's what got... Like, I wouldn't have guessed that ugly women got flagged. But anyway, okay. Literally this guy. But at the same time, it is classic fairy logic to be like, do what I say, but do it meaningfully. It can't be both, bud. Anyway, for 5 years you shall be a sheep, and lord of this pleasant land, while I, no longer able to see your face, which I love so much, shall be able to hate you as you deserve to be hated. Which shows the whole point of this. None of these people actually love each other. They all just want to have power over each other. And it's sad. But, hey, olden times. I don't know. Ah, you're right. You're right. Those probably did it. Okay. She disappeared as she finished speaking, and if I had not been too unhappy to care about anything, I should have been glad that she was gone. Yeah. Things to know. The talking sheep received me as their king, and told me that they too were unfortunate princes who had in different ways offended the revengeful fairy. Are you kidding me? All of the sheep are princes? That you'd think she'd learn a lesson. They're never gonna say they love you. My God. Okay. It's a whole flock of princes, lady. It's not gonna work. Anyway, okay. Had offended the revengeful fairy and had been added to her flock for a certain number of years, some more, some less. From time to time, indeed. Right? Oh, hello, Skunky Anderson. Welcome. Yeah, as we stated earlier in this story, fairy tale people be dumb as hell. Oh, what is it? Oh, I realized what I was referring to and didn't quite get it right. Hey, we are reading a very strange story that had an awful start, and so we're not reading it with very much seriousness, and we're roasting it every now and then, interrupting fairly frequently. It's a moment. Shepherd of the Prejudiced. Yeah. Oh, okay. The point is, all of these sheep are princes that have offended this fairy that's a dumbass fairy because she does not learn her lesson. Exactly. Not unlike the history of Whittington, which was just a bunch of sexual innuendos that they may or may not have been aware of. Probably they knew full well of. Anyway, okay. From time to time, indeed, one regains his own proper form, and this is the king sheep man, I guess. Which, why is he in charge then? What makes him better? Anyway, time and again, one gains his proper form and goes back again to his place in the upper world. But the other beings whom you saw are the rivals or the enemies of Regat, whom she has imprisoned for 100 years or so. Wait, which beings are that? Does anybody remember any beings that were listed that aren't sheep? 'Cause I don't. The ones that are alive, I mean. Anyway, okay. Other beings that are rivals or the enemies of Regat, the fairy, whom she has imprisoned for 100 years or so, though even they will go back at last. Oh, that's the fairies that were serving fruit but didn't actually serve it, maybe? No, those are the monkey and such were in the actual kingdom. Irrelevant to Regat the fairy or this shitty sheep dude. Okay. 100 years, even though they will go back last. Monk, yeah, they be hella dead. The young slave of whom I told you about is one of these. Okay, I have seen her often, and it has been a great pleasure to me. She never speaks to me, and if I were nearer to her, I know I should find her only a shadow, which would be very annoying. However, I noticed that one of my companions in misfortune was also very attentive to this little sprite, and I found out that he had been her lover, whom the cruel Regat had taken away from her long before. Since then, I have cared for and thought of nothing but how I might regain my freedom. I have often been in the forest. That is where I have seen you, lovely princess, sometimes driving your chariot, which you did with all the grace and skill in the world, sometimes riding to the chase on so spirited a horse that it seemed as if no one but yourself could have managed it, and sometimes running races on the plain with the princesses of your court, running so lightly that it was you always who won the prize. O princess, I have loved you so long, and yet how dare I tell you of my love? What hope can there be for an unhappy sheep like myself? Which is a lot to lay on a girl after all the stuff she's been through. I will remind, even though that nonsense happened at the start that was awful, to give this princess some credit, as opposed to the writer of the story, no credit. She told them not to do that. She told them not to die. And they just did it anyway. Oh my gosh, we do mention them again. Look at this. Here we go. Miranda was so surprised and confused by all that she had heard that she hardly knew what answer to give the king of the sheep, but she managed to make some kind of little speech, which certainly did not forbid him to hope, and said that she should not be afraid of the shadows now she knew that they would some day come to life again. Alas, she continued, if my poor Patipata, my dear Grabusian, and my pretty little Tintin, who all died for my sake, were equally well off, I should have nothing left to wish for here. Prisoner though he was, the king of the sheep still had some powers and privileges. Oh my gosh. Oh no. Go, said he to the master of his horse. We're thinking main character listens? Yeah, sometimes they do listen. Sometimes they are mildly wise, sometimes they are not. But okay, so the sheep man is saying, go, said he to his master of the horse. Yeah, of the horse. Wait, what? Anyway, go and seek the shadows of the little black girl, the monkey, and the dog. They will amuse our princess. Oh, so he told the slave of the horse to go. They dropped the idiot ball. I think what I would say is the society and the writers are the biggest idiots for their nonsense with killing those characters in the beginning and being awful and racist and gross. And then the next idiot ball that is still kept up in the air is the sheep and the fairy interaction. But the little main princess, I don't know if she's dumb. The king, that was like weirdly an awful dad choosing some daughter over the others, still an idiot because, he did that, and then he, drop of a hat, was like, actually, go kill that one. She had a bad dream. Fuck her. So, no, there's still plenty of idiot balls in the air, but the princess is kind of just swept up in it so far. We haven't seen her be the root of the idiocy. Not yet, anyway. Yeah, they said the shadows of them, so maybe the ghosts of them, whatever, will amuse our princess. It really is. It is a giant question mark and very fucking weird. Okay. And an instant afterward, Miranda saw them coming toward her. Oh, yay! And their presence gave her the greatest pleasure, though they did not come near enough for her to touch them. The king of the sheep was so kind and amusing, and Miranda loved so dearly, that at last she began to love him too. Miranda is our main princess that we're following. The youngest of the daughters, the person who the slave and the dog and the monkey all died for very stupidly. Not that I blame them at all. Anyway, Miranda began to love him too. Such a handsome sheep. And so Miranda's a furry. Such a handsome sheep who is so polite and considerate. Could hardly fail to please, especially if one knew that he was really a king, and that his strange imprisonment would soon come to an end. So the princess's days passed very gaily, while she waited for the happy time to come. The happy time to come, I guess, when their imprisonments were over. The king of the sheep, with the help of all the flock, got up balls, concerts, and hunting parties, and even the shadows joined in all the fun and came, making believe to be their own real selves. Okay. I mean... DewOnTheGrass. Yes. Okay. It's just such a moment. Anyway. So, was we? Okay. One evening, when the courtiers arrived, for the king sent most carefully for news, as they always brought the very best kinds. I don't know which king. I think Sheep King. The couriers. Sheep King's couriers, probably. It was announced that the censor... Oh, no. Okay, so this is the main dad king. His couriers arrived. It was announced that the sister of Princess Miranda was going to be married to a great prince, and that nothing could be more splendid than all the preparations for the wedding. Oh no, it is the king sheep sent out news, and they learned about the main kingdom. Okay. Ah, cried the young princess, how unlucky I am to miss the sight of so many pretty things, aka her sister's wedding. Here I am imprisoned under the earth with no company but sheep and shadows, while my sister is to be adorned like a queen and surrounded by all who love and admire her, and everyone but myself can go to wish her joy. And I'll remind everyone that the reason her dad kicked her out and wanted her dead, actually, was because she had a dream that her sister got married, and at that sort of thing, her father washed her hands for her, basically. And he was like, I'm not going to be her slave. Are you kidding me? Yeah, she ran out into the forest. There was a guard that was supposed to kill her, and that's when the three died. Yeah, and so that's when the three died, and like that sort of Snow White moment. And I don't know if the guard ever like convinced the king or what, but so she knew that she still wasn't safe, and so she kept running, and she landed in that corner of the forest with the sheep, and the sheep was like, "Oh my god, I seen you before here, girl." Anyway, are you shitting me? Missing all the fun? Yeah. Anyway, okay. So the wedding is happening that she freaking called, and so now, how I am to miss that, and everyone but myself can go to wish her joy. Dumbass King Sheep. Okay, he says, "Why do you complain, princess?" said the king of the sheep. "Did I say that you were not to go to the wedding? Set out as soon as you please. Only promise me that you will come back, for I love you too much to be able to live without you." Did we forget why she ran in the first place, you idiots? Because then Miranda was very grateful to him and promised faithfully that nothing in the world should keep her from coming back. Maybe the king killing you? Anyway, the human king, not the sheep king. The sheep king, it just says king, but I know which one we're talking about. The sheep king caused an escort suitable to her rank to be got ready for her, and she dressed herself splendidly, and not forgetting anything that could make her more beautiful. Her chariot was mother of pearl, drawn by 6 dun-colored griffins, just brought from the other side of the world, and she was attended by a number of guards in splendid uniforms, who were all at least 8 feet high, wow, and had come from far and near to ride in the princess's train. Really, though, sheep does not pick up on context. You're gonna just stay silent? Okay. This is so funny. This is so weird in every turn, but we're just gonna keep going. Okay. We are nearer to the end. Still not quite there, though. Okay. Miranda reached her father's palace just as the wedding ceremony began, and everyone, as soon as she came in, was struck with surprise at her beauty and the splendor of her jewels. Not that she's alive? No? Okay. She heard exclamations of admiration on all sides, and the king, her father, looked at her so attentively that she was afraid he must recognize her, but he was so sure that she was dead that the idea never occurred to him. So these folks don't even recognize her. How long has she been gone? Okay. However, the fear of not getting away made her leave before the marriage was over. Okay, so she is remembering that, oh yeah, he's gonna kill me. At least somebody didn't lose the brains yet in this story. See, like I said, she's the one that doesn't have the stupid. She went out hastily, leaving behind her a little coral casket set with emeralds. On it was written in diamond letters, "Jewels for the bride." And when they opened it, which they did as soon as it was found, there seemed to be no end to the pretty things it contained. The king, who had hoped to join the unknown princess and find out who she was dreadfully disappointed when she disappeared so suddenly, and gave orders that if she ever came again, the doors were to be shut, that she might not get away so easily. Oh, God. Short as Miranda's absence had been, it had seemed like 100 years to the king of the sheep. He was waiting for her by a fountain in the thickest part of the forest, and the ground was strewn with splendid presents, which he had prepared for her to show his joy and gratitude at her coming back. Girls only want one thing: a retinue of 8-foot men, leading a mother-of-pearl carriage bestowed upon them by a sheep, also drawn by griffins. Kidnapping, let's go. Yep. My dad wants to kill me, and then, when he doesn't recognize me, hold me hostage. It's great. Parenting. Anyway. Oh. Yeah, probably would be. Just prince things, yeah. Oh my gosh, okay. I'll remind there's the king her father and there's the king the sheep, and I wish they would refer to them more clearly as two separate people. But yeah, that's okay. Oh yeah. Dom just got some work to do. Gotta set everything up right. Okay. Oh well, they said that it was from the other side of the world. What color? They had said it was 6 dun-colored griffins just brought from the other side of the world. So wherever you are, it's at the other side of the world. But anyway, okay. Where was it? Oh my gosh, okay, this might be a kind of a cute image. Here we go. As soon as she was in sight, he rushed to meet her, leaping and bounding like a real sheep. Aw. He caressed her tenderly, throwing himself at her feet and kissing her hands, as a sheep, and told her how uneasy he had been in her absence, and how impatient for her return, with an eloquence which charmed her. Yeah, a little bit. Okay, after some time came the news that the king's second daughter was going to be married. Okay, so I believe in her dream it was the second daughter. I assumed it was that one, but now, okay, there's the next marriage. When Miranda heard it, she begged the king of the sheep to allow her to go and see the wedding as before. This request made him feel very sad, as if some misfortune must surely come of it. But his love for the princess being stronger than anything else, he did not like to refuse her. So yeah, he's gonna let her go and they're gonna chat, but it made me realize, so when she left Jules, she had come in mother and pearl. She had brought, I believe she left emeralds, which is like the first daughter's dress and dream. That's the dream of the first daughter way back, because they had talked about that. Jewels for the bride. Coral casket set with emeralds. I'm going to see if I can scroll back without totally losing my place. The first daughter wore emeralds, wanting to get him there. I dreamed where was it? Sorry. The eldest said she dreamed he bought her a dress embroidery brighter than the sun. Second, it was a wheel and distaff. She might spin shirts. Okay, so a little bit different. Okay, so now we go back to where they were. You wish to leave me, princess, said he, the sheep. You wish to leave me, princess, said he. It is my unhappy fate. You are not to blame. I consent to your going, but believe me, I can give you no stronger proof of my love than by so doing. The princess assured him that she would only stay a very short time, as she had done before, and begged him not to be uneasy, as she would be quite as much grieved if anything detained her as he could possibly be. So yes. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of prophecy. I think that that's what her dream was. I was thinking that that's what it would end up being ages back. It's gotta be. It's gotta be. Hi, Fetster. We're just reading a very, honestly, fucked up and stupid story with some bullshit racism in the start, but we're nearly at the end and we're gonna get through this sheep tale. Yeah, she must have been just being prophetic. Anyway, okay. So, yeah, she doesn't want to stay either. And we're gonna hopefully not get kidnapped, right, Miranda? So, with the same escort, she set out and reached the palace as the marriage ceremony began. Everybody was delighted to see her. She was so pretty that they thought she must be some fairy princess, which sort of she is. She is a princess in a place guarded by fairies. and the princes who were there could not take their eyes off of her. The king was more glad than anyone else that she had come again, and gave orders that the doors all be shut and bolted that very minute, which is concerning, but here we go. When the wedding was all but over, the princess got up quickly, hoping to slip away unnoticed among the crowd. But to her great dismay, she found every door fastened. Dun dun dun. She felt more at ease when the king came up to her, and with the greatest respect begged her not to run away so soon, but at least to honor him by staying for the splendid feast which was prepared for the princes and princesses. He led her into a magnificent ball where all the court was assembled, and himself taking up the golden bowl of water and offered it to her that she might dip her pretty fingers into it. This is literally the dream that she had, and the part where he got pissed off was, she thinks I'm gonna be her slave, washing her hands. Buddy, you just did it. Ha ha ha. Yeah. Okay, go ahead and lurk, Fetster, no worries. Glad you're getting your foods. Snack time is good. But okay. Alright. This is just, it's so stupid. Just writing this up. Sorry, little moment. Okay. Do. Sorry. At this, the princess could no longer contain herself. Throwing herself at the king's feet, she cried out, "My dream has come true after all. You have offered me water to wash my hands on my sister's wedding day, and it has not vexed you to do it." The king recognized her at once. Indeed, he had already thought several times how much like his poor little Miranda she was. "Oh, my dear daughter," he cried, kissing her. "Can you ever forget my cruelty?" No, anyway, "I ordered you to be put to death because I thought your dream portended the loss of my crown, and so it did," he added, "for now your sisters are both married and have kingdoms of their own, and mine shall be for you." So saying, he put his crown on the princess's head and cried, "Long live Queen Miranda!" Are you fucking kidding me? Yeah, exactly. My next weird dream, and I'm gonna walk out those doors and never see you crazy asses again. Because this was a lot, dude. Anyway, okay. All the court cried, "Long live Queen Miranda!" after him, and the young queen's two sisters came running up and threw their arms around her neck and kissed her 1,000 times. And then there was such a laughing and crying, talking and kissing all at once, and Miranda thanked her father and began to ask everyone, particularly the captain of the guard. Oh, good for him. I thought he'd be dead too for not actively killing the princess. Anyway, to whom she owed so much. Oh, we'll get to the sheep in a minute, I'm sure. But to her great sorrow, she heard that he was dead. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Oh, of course he's dead. Presently they sat down to the banquet, and the king asked Miranda to tell them all that happened to her since the terrible morning when he had sent the captain of the guard to fetch her. This she did with so much spirit that all the guests listened with breathless interest. But while she was thus enjoying herself with the king and her sisters, the king of the sheep was waiting impatiently for the time of her return. And when it came and went, and no princess appeared, his anxiety became so great that he could bear it no longer. "She is not coming back any more," he cried. "My miserable sheep's face displeases her, and without Miranda, what is left to me, wretched creature that I am? Oh, cruel Ragot, my punishment is complete." I'm confused with how he would know and why she wouldn't be the one to tell him, but okay. For a long time he bewailed his sad fate like this, and then, seeing that it was growing dark, and that still there was no sign of the princess, he set out as fast as he could in the direction of the town, which he reached the palace. When he reached the palace, he asked for Miranda, but by this time everyone had heard the story of her adventures and did not want her to go back to the king of the sheep. Oh, these assholes. Okay, so they refused sternly to let him see her. In vain he begged and prayed them to let him in. Though his entreaties might have melted hearts of stone, they did not move the guards of the palace, and at last, quite broken-hearted, he fell dead at their feet. Well, okay. In the meantime, the king, who had not the least idea of the sad thing that was happening outside the gate of his palace, proposed to Miranda that she should be driven in her chariot all around town, which was to be illuminated with thousands and thousands of torches, placed in windows and balconies, and in all the grand squares. But what a sight met her eyes at the very entrance of the palace! There lay her dear kind sheep, silent and motionless, upon the pavement. She threw herself out of the chariot and ran to him, crying bitterly, for she realized that her broken promise had cost him his life, and for a long, long time she was so unhappy that they thought she would have died too. So you see that even a princess is not always happy, especially if she forgets to keep her word, and the greatest misfortunes often happen to people just as they think they have obtained their heart's desires. I hope so too, because this is so... What? Who do we need to feel sorry for now? Do we even need to feel sorry in general? Maybe the princess. Maybe feel bad for the princess. Because here's the deal. This awful story is ended, and it is only the second story in all of these fairy tales that we have read that it is a relatively sad ending, not a proper happy ending. Here's the story of this awful, ridiculous story. So, step 1, there's a terrible father. Yeah. There's a terrible father who is... yeah. There's a terrible father who is praising one sister more than the others, and the second that she seems vain or entitled, he wants her killed. Very suddenly. Very, very suddenly. And when she goes to try and evade killing, 3 beloved people, or animals included to her, kill themselves to prevent her death in a very useless, wasteful way that in the end was entirely pointless. And the one death, the way that went and why it was pointless, was very racist. Then she's in the woods, she finds a sheep. It's a classic, someone with power traps people, and when they don't submit to being in love with them because, they're just trying to not die, it doesn't matter to them, and another one's trapped. There's a whole flock of princes that this fairy has forced into love, and when they refuse, she then hates and obviously never loved them. It's awful. Yeah, it probably. Don't feel sorry for any of this, people. Then the sheep dude sees this princess that he's seen before and asks her to stay in this creepy place because it's just sheep and ghosts. And when she's telling him, like, dude, I don't know, this place is scary. It's like, I get that there's like food and lots of pretty things, but like, it's just creepy. I don't like it. This is creeping me out. He's like, oh, go get those ghosts that she cared about. That'll amuse her. Get more creepy things in here. Dude, really? Anyway, okay. Exactly. And then he loves her so instantly and is like, will you marry me? And she's like, this is kind of a lot. Can we like not do it? Like not talk about that right now? because it's a lot that you're throwing at me. And then she hears news that her sister's getting married. She goes to see that. Part of the prophecy that got her kicked out in the first place. She comes back. She goes back again for the next wedding. And then everybody's obsessed with her like before, but they managed to catch her and they're all happy. The sheep was expecting her back, and his entitled ass, he wants to die because she doesn't return, so he goes looking for her. At least he didn't just like shrivel up in the little place where he was stuck and gave up there. And the townspeople were like, no, we don't want her to leave. No. Yeah, they are. Oh, just such a mess. And like that this is supposed to be the moral, that you can always have things go out of your way. Like, this is a terrible story. Just no, I hate it. So this is getting my own personal warning. I've been writing out all the stories for myself so I can keep track of what I have and haven't read. And a couple of the other... Oh, that reminds me, I do have to put a exclamation next to the other one too, because they had quote-unquote bundles in it. They used a slur that also means bundles. And so I had to do that. I'm noting anything that is concerning like that. And so I have noted this story down. If I ever read it again, it needs to be summarized and changed a little bit, because, like, oh, wow. No, there isn't always a moral to these stories. But this one directly said, so, you see, what is it? So you see that even a princess is not always happy, especially if she forgets to keep her word, and the greatest misfortunes often happen to people just as they think they have obtained their heart's desires. Just to tell everyone, hey, better keep your promises, and unhappiness can come at the worst time. Thanks for listening. Like, thanks. Awful story. What the Princesses poop too. Woe and wheel. Hey, sometimes life sucks. Hope you enjoyed. Yeah. Even though English. Yeah, you're right. Don't die. It's a no word. Thanks, Fester. It was a wild ride, and I'm glad that you guys were here with me on it. Not a ton of people, but I'm glad that you guys were here. Very glad. Oh, wow. There's about to be another ad, so I'm going to hit run the ad to save ourselves more time. And then we'll go to the next story. What's the story called? The First World Problems and Struggles over the Top Spoiled Princess? No, you would think, but it's just called The Wonderful Sheep. That is an alternate title for sure. Oh, yes. Oh, I'd love it. And like properly gay, not just like happy gay. Hell yeah. But I'm going to run an ad real quick. Okay. Don't worry, Dunda. I like your title. It works good too. It's just a bit long, but I like that too. Yeah, you were better off. You did get the summary though, so you know exactly why it was awful. To be fair, like I was expecting that when they did that, we would never hear about those characters again. They named them, but we never heard about them again is what I was expecting. And then we did actually get to... Oh, well that's cool. It says it's still going. So that just means that I get more money than necessary, maybe. The deal was that like they gave them names, they let them all talk, and then when we met the sheep and the sheep was talking, the princess was like, "Whoa, you guys talk? Talking sheep? Like what?" And the sheep was like, your monkey and your dog talked. Is that not weird? And like, it was so stupid because before I had read ahead to that line, I said that out loud. I was like, your monkey and your dog talk, but you're shocked at sheep, okay. And then literally that's what the sheep man said. I was like, okay, you got me, story. You got me on that one. I'll give you a couple good story points for that little moment, but your start was still god awful. Yes, go ahead, Dew on the Grass, and give us your story. Well, that's lovely. We like to see it. Every time I've been reading and they went gaily, I've been like, okay, so we're all queer here, and I love it. Anyway. Yeah. Yeah, there's not always great starts. This one was an awful start, but you know what? It's done now. All right, here is this one. The Lumberjack and the Arborist. I see that this is... Ooh, I see that this is a dock, so I have to ask DewOnTheGrass, did you or someone you know write this one? Please tell us all about it, and I'll type out the title because I like to have that up top, just for when I put that on. Good old little Dick Whittington. Oh my god! Literally, the first story of that whole story was Dick, and I loved it. Anyway, okay, I'm gonna type up the title. Please put in the chat whatever you want to tell us. DewOnTheGrass, or you can tell us after. I don't know. Whatever you feel comfortable. No, cooperate. Okay. That? Wrote it in your car after work. That's awesome. Well, let's see what you got. Okay, I'm glad we've got some curiosity in the chat. This is nice. Okay. The Lumberjack and the Arborist. Let's just make sure my freaking thing is cooperating. Alright. A lumberjack entered the forest and came out the other side. Before him was no longer a dense gnarl of bark and my voice right now. Before him was no longer a dense gnarl of bark and branch, but a tidy grid of maturing saplings, planted one in front of the next. Intrigued, the lumberjack laid down his felling axe and began to walk past tree after tree, marveling at their uniform trunks beneath slowly reddening leaves. A thin man crossed his path, toting a cumbersome wheelbarrow of mulched dirt and wood, and the lumberjack called to him. I'm glad everyone's getting excited. Okay, I'll stop looking at the chat and I'll just read it directly. I need to not get distracted for this one. Okay, sorry. The arborist turned with a smile and replied that yes, it was his orchard, and would the lumberjack care to take his wheelbarrow from him, a meal would gratefully follow. Oh, they were fast friends, the lumberjack and the arborist. They whiled away the weeks and months, and the lumberjack developed a special fondness for the man. One day the lumberjack passed the tallest tree of the orchard and noticed something rather strange. He stopped and stared up at its wide trunk beneath the slowly crumbling leaves. The arborist appeared behind him and asked what caught his eye. He turned, and unable to admit that what had caught his eye was the arborist himself, the lumberjack hurriedly directed his attention to the curious tree split right down the middle. The arborist replied with a laugh that no, it had not been struck down by the heavens, but that the tree had simply overgrown itself, and the old dead bark had slowly come apart as the pressure of the growth divided the husk in two. Is it dead? The lumberjack asked. Goodness, no. It has merely lapsed in its restraint and outpaced itself. Returning home, Returning home, the lumberjack took his felling axe and split himself some firewood for the evening. The split tree continued its growth as the lumberjack and the arborist whiled away the weeks and months, but as quickly as their friendship grew, the lumberjack's restraint never lapsed. Slowly, atop the trunk of that once split tree, a bifurcation emerged. I don't entirely know how to pronounce that word. Bifurcation emerged. The arborist was elated. So what? The lumberjack asked over their dinner. It wasn't as if the arborist suddenly had two trees where one once stood. No, the arborist admitted, it was only one tree, but it would no longer have to grow alone. The lumberjack had no response to this, and so he went home, took his felling axe, and split himself some firewood for the evening. And so they whiled away the weeks and months, and the lumberjack grew ever closer to confession until at last he marched through the gnarled forest, through the orchard, past the bifurcated tree, through the arborist's front door, and found him dead on the kitchen floor. He buried his love beneath that tree, the monumental curiosity, the arborist's pride and joy. He stared up at budding leaves above its solid trunk. The lumberjack took his felling axe and split himself right down the middle. Now he would never grow lonely again. Well, all right then. Yeah. Two trunks, but I just don't know how to pronounce that. Wow. Yeah, of course he was flannel. That's a lumberjack. Yeah. Definitely chilling. What a story. Okay. DewOnTheGrass. Okay. We see you. That was great. And it definitely falls in line with these stories to the degree of like, and then he just killed himself. Like, okay. I guess that's the direction. But also, it's the poetic choice and so on like that. But it's just, it fits very well. Definitely very cool story. Everyone give praise, give hype, give frogs, give little frogs. Frog! Okay, that's our emotes over here. It definitely can. You are absolutely right. I think it's just how your like style is. Like I said, it fits very well with these older fairy tales, and I liked it. I'm very used to reading these now, and it felt like I was reading another one of those with, I don't know if they would have used bifurcation or like arborist. I think they would have done that just fine. They probably would have had a few more older style words, but that's it. I loved it. Thank you very much for it. So he didn't grow lonely. Get it? An arborist is someone that plants trees and looks after trees. So, yeah, and it's the sort of poetic choice to have the person that creates the trees, the person with the orchard, and the person that cuts down the trees. The lumberjack, yeah. So that's why they went so well together, yeah. Lots of props to you, DewOnTheGrass. Thank you for that one. A groundskeeper is someone that could look after buildings and land and animals. The arborist is someone that is directly looking at the trees. So, like, if a tree is sick, they can look to help the tree. If you were to take an orange tree and add a branch of a different citrus, because you can do that. Yeah, a tree doctor doing the tree births and the tree maintenance and stuff like that. Yeah. But that was so great. So thank you. All right. Sorry, messing around with my mic. I will make sure I have noted that in my books, and I will make sure that it is noted on my YouTube. And the Arborist. Let's make sure we note it is Dew on the Grass. Yeah, sad in a sweet way. Okay. We have done that. Pretty sure that this Hansel and Gretel is the exact same, except for a different spelling of Gretel than the one I had done before, so I won't say that. We've done all those. Wait, is Toads and Diamonds put twice, or did I? Oh no, yeah, okay. What is Prince Darling? I think that's the next one that we'd be doing. Of course, Dew. You did great. You do great. Ha ha ha. Puns. Punny pun pun. Actually, I think I'll just take a minute. Literally, I'll take 1 minute to hydrate, stretch, and sit back down. If you guys have another story request or trigger requests, or you want to chat and you have questions to just chat about, we can do that. Or lots of frogs. Yes, good job. Send all the frogs to DewOnTheGrass. What was it? The next story based on my list is to read Prince Darling. That's the next story we haven't actually read yet. I don't think we have anyway. So, after my minute away, I'll come back, and if no one has anything else specific, no chat, no triggers, no other stories, I'll read that one. Okay. Be right back. I am back. Okay. Yes. Lots of props to them. Ooh, what is this? Dyslexia would not help writing. No, very true. If I let me share something of my older stuff. Hey, yeah, of course. Happy to do that with reading anybody's stuff. If you are the one that's written it, I'd love to be told beforehand what it's about, and that's about it, so that we can kind of gauge what's happening. And like, if you've been listening, you know that I'll skip over certain words if I'm not. We'll just say no to that. But because you're the one that wrote it, I may show a little bit more upset at you for it because well, you'd know better. Andres, hello. We are just chatting before our next story. We just had someone share their story that I read, so we're just talking about how awesome that was. But yes, so many props to DewOnTheGrass for sharing and for that story. Does anybody have anything that they want to chat about? Trigger requests, story requests? Because I am likely to move along. Yeah. I would hope so. But to be fair, Wonderful Sheep didn't say any active words. And, I mean, it's awful. But in the time, they really just thought that. They thought that they were being respectful. Which is just wild. Ugh. In Little Thumb, they used an N-word. A kinder version of the N-word, but it's still not great. All of it's awful, so I just skipped over that. Do you know the SCP collection of stories, the internet thing? Someone has told me, Violet Spellcraft, who got me into this, told me that that's something people like to have read. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It aged terribly, but they also, like, as I pointed out earlier, that, like, if they had taken the time to just actually look, to talk, sorry, the dice moved, then it wouldn't have been awful like it was. Like, it's not that hard to realize that everyone has the same color of tongue, roughly, despite their color of skin. Just take half a second to actually look at a person while they're talking. A basic respect. Like, it's really not that surprising. Like, oh my god. Anyway. Oh well. We're dumb. Bunch of dumbasses. Okay. But that is a great imagery, Cage Nightwind. Yeah, I would assume that would be how that ends up. They went into how they were cutting out the tongue, and then why would you think that someone's tongue is black? Why? And like, they didn't say burnt or anything. Like, okay, that might have been why someone's tongue is described as black. No. Just dummies. Okay. We'll move on past it. It was awful, but now we'll move on past it. We don't need any more of it. We can have better things. I have did a Prince Darling as the next story, if that's all good to move on to. But if there's more chatting we want to do, that is good. Polar bears. Yeah, polar bears aren't white under their fur. They're mostly black under there, just for warmth and stuff, I think, and then light reflection. Interesting thing to learn, but Their tongue wouldn't be black, probably, although I have seen some dogs have like black spots. Maybe a bear would have black spot tongue. I wouldn't know that. All right. But that, of course, is obviously very, very different with animals. They wouldn't have... Anyway, okay. They were dumbasses, so they were dumbasses about it all. Okay. Yeah, it's in the section. It's mutations, I'm pretty sure. In animals, different mutations for that. Wine spots. Yeah, I think so. I don't know wine spots well. Okay. It's the same kind of family of things, I think. I don't really know. Obviously, that's not my specialty of knowledges. Okay, Prince Darling. Once upon a time there lived a king who was so just and kind that his subjects called him the Good King. It happened one day when he was out hunting that a little white rabbit, which his dogs were chasing, sprang into his arms for shelter. The king stroked it gently and said to it, "Well, Bunny, as you have come to me for protection, I will see that nobody hunts you." Ooh. Yeah, exactly. Moving on and good. Okay. And he took the bunny home to his palace and had it put in a pretty little house with all sorts of nice things to eat. That night, when he was alone in his room, a beautiful lady suddenly appeared before him. Her long dress was as white as snow, and she had a crown of white roses upon her head. The good king was very much surprised to see her, for he knew his door had been tightly shut, and he could not think of how she had got in. But she said to him, "I am the Fairy of Truth. I was passing through the wood when you were out hunting, and I wished to find out if you were really good, as everybody said you were. So I took the shape of a little rabbit and came to your arms for shelter. For I know that those who are merciful to animals will be still kinder to their fellow men. If you had refused to help me, I should have been certain that you were wicked. I thank you for the kindness you have shown me, which has made me your friend forever. You have only to ask me for anything you want, and I promise that I will give it to you." Something science. Is that science or just... Anyway, I will say whenever they do these things like, "Oh, because you didn't kill the animal," or "because you saved the animal from the other animal trying to eat it, you're good." But then the other animal doesn't get food in certain cases. So, like, guys, have a little more moral wibbliness, because there's some multiple points of views, my dudes. Okay. "Madam," said the good king, "since you are a fairy..." Yeah, that is what I'm at. Yeah. "Madam, since you are a fairy, you no doubt know all my wishes. I have but one son who I love very dearly. That is why he is called Prince Darling. If you are really good enough to wish to do me a favor, I beg that you will become his friend." "With all my heart," answered the fairy. "I can make your son the handsomest prince in the world, or the richest, or the most powerful. Choose whichever you like for him." "I do not ask either of these things for my son," replied the good king. "But if you will make him the best of princes, I shall indeed be grateful to you. What good would it do him to be rich or handsome, or to possess all the kingdoms of the world, if he were wicked? You know well he would still be unhappy. Only a good man can be really contented." "You are quite right," answered the fairy, "but it is not in my power to make Prince Darling a good man unless he will help me. He must himself try hard to become good. I can only promise to give him good advice, to scold him for his faults, and to punish him if he will not correct and punish himself." The good king was quite satisfied with this promise, and very soon afterward he died. Oh, okay. Do we know why? All right, anyway. Prince Darling was very sorry, for he loved his father with all his heart, and would willingly have given all his kingdoms and all his treasures of gold and silver if they could have kept the good king with him. 2 days afterward, when the prince had gone to bed, the fairy suddenly appeared to him and said, "I promised your father that I would be your friend, and to keep my word I have come to bring you a present." At the same time she put a little gold ring upon his finger. "Take care of this ring," she said. "It is more precious than diamonds. Every time you do a bad deed, it will prick your finger. But if in spite of its pricking you go on doing your evil way, you will lose my friendship, and I shall become your enemy." So saying, the fairy disappeared, leaving the Prince Darling very much astonished. For some time he behaved so well that the ring never pricked him, and that made him so contented that his subjects called him Prince Darling the Happy. One day, however, he went out hunting, but could get no sport, which put him in a very bad temper. It seemed to him as he rode along that his ring was pressing into his finger, but as it did not prick him, he did not heed it. When he got home and went to his own room, his little dog, Bibi, ran to meet him, jumping round him with pleasure. "Get away," said the prince, quite gruffly. "I don't want you. You are in the way." The poor little dog, who didn't understand this at all, pulled at his coat to make him at least look at her, and this made the Prince Darling so cross that he gave her ever quite a hard kick. "Okay, Prince. You've lost your earning to that name, 'cause no, not okay." Instantly the ring pricked him, sharply, as if it had been a pin. He was very much surprised and sat down in a corner of his room, feeling quite ashamed of himself. "I believe the fairy is laughing at me," he thought. "Surely I can have done no great wrong in just kicking a tiresome animal. Okay, yes, oh no, that's not okay. What is the good of my being a ruler of a great kingdom if I'm not even allowed to beat my own dog?" Once upon a time, they really believed that that was fine. Anyway, "I am not making fun of you," said a voice, answering the Prince Darling's thoughts. "You have committed 3 faults. First of all, you were out of temper because you could not have what you wanted, and you thought all men and animals were only made to do your pleasure. Then you were really angry, which is very naughty indeed. And lastly, you were cruel to a poor animal who did not in the least deserve to be ill-treated. I know you are far above a little dog, but if it were right and allowable that great people should all ill-treat all who are beneath them, I might at this moment beat you or kill you, for a fairy is greater than a man. The advantage of possessing a great empire is not to be able to do the evil that one desires, but to do all the good that one possibly can." This fairy spit in bars. Good, exactly. The prince saw how naughty he had been and promised to try and do better in future, but he did not keep his word. No, okay. The fact was he had been brought up by a foolish nurse who had spoiled him when he was little. If he wanted anything, he had only to cry and fret and stamp his feet, and she would give him whatever he asked for, which had made him self-willed. Also, she had told him from morning to night that he would one day be a king, and that kings were very happy because everyone was bound to obey and respect them, and no one could prevent them from doing just as they liked. When the prince grew old enough to understand, he soon learned that there could be nothing worse than to be proud, obstinate, and conceited, and he had really tried to cure himself of these defects, but by that time all his faults had become habits, and a bad habit is very hard to get rid of. Not that he was naturally of a bad disposition. He was truly sorry when he had been naughty, and said, "I am very unhappy to have to struggle against my anger and pride every day. If I had been punished for them when I was little, they would not be such a trouble to me now." Yeah, definitely set this kid up for failure. And I'm kind of liking this moral to this story. I like this. A story against entitlement with a good deal more passion about it. Like, well, it's a bad habit. You gotta fight it, and it's going to be a lot harder to fight now. That's why you gotta kind of get on it early. But hey, you can do it. So let's see. Hopefully this goes well. His ring pricked him very often, and sometimes he let off what he was doing at once, but other times he would not attend to it. Strangely enough, it gave him only a slight prick for a trifling fault, but when he was really naughty, it made his finger actually bleed. At last he got tired of being constantly reminded and wanted to be able to do as he liked. Oh no, so he threw the ring aside and thought himself the happiest of men to have got rid of its teasing pricks. He gave himself up to doing every foolish thing that occurred to him until he became quite wicked and nobody could like him any longer. Oh no. One day when the prince was walking about, he saw a young girl who was so very pretty that he made up his mind at once that he would marry her. Her name was Celia, and she was as good as she was beautiful. Prince Darling, really not deserving of the name in it at all anymore, fancied that Celia would think herself only too happy if he ordered to make her a great queen, but she said fearlessly, "Sire, I am only a shepherdess and a poor girl, but nevertheless I will not marry you." "Do you dislike me?" asked the prince, who was very much vexed at this answer. "No, my prince," replied Celia, "I cannot help thinking you are very handsome. But what good would riches do me, and all the grand dresses and splendid carriages that you would give me, if the bad deeds which I should see you do every day made me hate and despise you?" Yeah, the prince is called Darling, but he does not deserve it. You're laughing? Yeah, she is. She's an A-plus lady, and I'm sure that the fairy is like, this is exactly the kind of girl this asshole needed to fall for. He's gonna learn all his shit now. Okay. The prince was very angry at this speech and commanded his officers to make Celia a prisoner. What the fuck? And carry her off to his palace. All day long the remembrance of what she had said annoyed him, but as he loved her he could not make up his mind to have her punished. One of the prince's favorite companions of his foster brother, whom he trusted entirely, was his foster brother, whom he trusted entirely, but he was not at all a good man, and gave Prince Darling very bad advice, and encouraged him in all his evil ways. When he saw the prince so downcast, he asked what was the matter, and when he explained that he could not bear Celia's bad opinion of him, and was resolved to be a better man in order to please her, the evil adviser said to him, "You are very kind to trouble yourself about this little girl. If I were you, I would soon make her obey me. Remember that you are a king, and that it would be laughable to see you trying to please a shepherdess who ought to be only too glad to be one of your slaves. Ick. Keep her in prison and feed her on bread and water for a little while. And then if she still says she will not marry you, have her head cut off, to teach other people that you mean to be obeyed. Why, if you cannot make a girl like that do as you wish, your subjects will soon forget that they are only put into this world for our pleasure." I guess what they mean is like she could have been tortured or something. Maybe withheld food from or whatever. Yeah. What I'm getting is we have the angel on your shoulder, that is the fairy and the ring, and then we have the devil on your shoulder, that is the very Andrew Tate-like foster brother. Anyway. "But," said Prince Darling, "would it not be a shame if I had an innocent girl put to death? For Celia has done nothing to deserve punishment." "If people will not do as you tell them, they ought to suffer for it," answered his foster brother. He's just one of the manosphere people that misogynist thinks women should be doing whatever men say, and you should be playing mind games with them, and you gotta be an alpha, and that kind of bullshit. Ick. Anyway, also he accused of sex trafficking crap, so fun. Anyway. Brother says they should suffer for it, but even if it were unjust, you had better be accused of that by your subjects than that they should find out that they may insult and thwart you as often as they please. Yeah, absolutely is. Anyway, in saying this, he was touching a weak point in his brother's character, for the prince's fear of losing any of his power made him at once abandon his first idea of trying to be good, and resolve to try and frighten the shepherdess into consenting to marry him. His obsession with power made him forget kindness. How lovely. His foster brother, who wanted him to keep his resolution, invited 3 young courtiers, as wicked as himself, to sup with the prince, and they persuaded him to drink a great deal of wine, and continued to excite his anger against Celia by telling him that she had laughed at his love for her, until at last, in quite a furious rage, he rushed off to find her, declaring that if she still refused to marry him, she would be sold as a slave the very next day. I'm losing faith in these fairy tales. They're all being very awful right now. But when he reached the room in which Celia had been locked up, he was greatly surprised to find that she was not in it, though he had the key in his own pocket all the time. His anger was terrible, and he vowed vengeance against whoever had helped her to escape. His bad friends, when they heard him, resolved to turn his wrath upon an old nobleman who had formerly been his tutor, and who still dared sometimes to tell the prince of his faults, for he loved him as if he had been his own son. At first Prince Darling had thanked him, but after a time he grew so impatient and thought it must be just mere love of fault-finding that made his old tutor blame him when everyone else was praising and flattering him. So he ordered him to retire from his court, until he still, from time to time, spoke of him as a worthy man whom he respected, even if he no longer loved him. His unworthy friends feared that he might some day take it into his head to recall his old tutor, so they thought they now had a good opportunity of getting him banished forever. They reported to the prince that Suleiman, for that was the tutor's name, had boasted of having helped Celia to escape, and they bribed 3 men to say that Suleiman himself had told them about it. The prince, in great anger, sent his foster brother with a number of soldiers to bring his tutor before him in chains like a criminal. After giving this order, he went to his own room, but he had scarcely got into it when there was a clap of thunder which made the ground shake, and the fairy Truth appeared suddenly before him. Yeah, we needed her to be here a while ago. But okay, here she's come back. Oh, God. I'm just resettling myself. Okay. I promised your father, she said sternly, to give you good advice and to punish you if you refused to follow it. You have despised my brain. You have despised my counsel and have gone your own evil way until you are only outwardly a man. Really, you are a monster, the horror of everyone who knows you. It is time that I should fulfill my promise and begin your punishment. I condemn you to resemble the animals whose ways you have imitated. You have made yourself like the lion by your anger, and like the wolf by your greediness. Like the snake, you have ungratefully returned upon one who is second father to you. Your churlishness has made you like a bull. Therefore, in your new form, take the appearance of all these animals. The fairy had scarcely finished speaking when Prince Darling saw to his horror that her words were fulfilled. He had a lion's head, a bull's horns, a wolf's feet, and a snake's body. At the same instant he found himself in a great forest, beside a clear lake, in which he could see plainly the horrible creature he had become, and a voice said to him, "Look carefully at the state to which your wickedness has brought you. Believe me, your soul is 1,000 times more hideous than your body." Prince Darling recognized the voice of the very Truth, and turned in a fury to catch her and eat her up if he possibly could. But he saw no one, and the same voice went on. "I laugh at your powerlessness and anger, and I intend to punish your pride by letting you fall into the hands of your own subjects." The prince began to think that the best thing he could do would be to get as far away from the lake as he could. Then at least he would not be continually reminded of his terrible ugliness. So he ran toward the wood. But before he had gone many yards, he fell into a deep pit which had been made to trap bears, and the hunters who were hiding in a tree leaped down and secured him with several chains and led him into the chief city of his own kingdom. On the way, instead of recognizing that his own faults had brought his punishment upon him, he accused the fairy of being the cause of all his misfortunes, and bit and tore at his chains furiously. As they approached the town, he saw that some great rejoicing was being held, and when the hunters asked what had happened, they were told that the prince, whose only pleasure it was to torment his people, had been found in his room, killed by a thunderbolt, for that was supposed to have become of him. 4 of his courtiers, those who had encouraged him in his wicked doings, had tried to seize the kingdom and divide it between them, but the people, who knew it was their bad counsels which had so changed the prince, had cut off their heads. Oh, hell yeah! Rebellion! And offered the crown to Suleiman, even better, whom the prince had left in prison. This noble lord had just been crowned, and the deliverance of the kingdom was the cause of the rejoicing, for, they said, he is a good and just man, and we shall once more enjoy peace and prosperity. Ah, good for them. Prince Darling roared with anger when he heard this, but it was still worse for him when he reached the great square before his own palace. He saw Suleiman seated upon a magnificent throne, and all the people crowded round, wishing him a long life, that he might undo all the mischief done by his predecessor. Presently Suleiman made a sign with his hand that the people should be silent, and said, "I have accepted the crown you have offered me, but only that I may keep it for Prince Darling, who is not dead as you suppose. The fairy has assured me that there is still hope that you may some day see him again, good and virtuous as he was when he first came to the throne. Alas," he continued, "he was led away by flatterers. I knew his heart, and am certain that if it had not been for the bad influence of those who surrounded him, he would have been a good king and a father to his people. We may hate his faults, but let us pity him and hope for his restoration. As for me, I would die gladly if that could bring back our prince to reign justly and worthily once more." I'm loving this, that they're all very supportive. Like, that's the moral, to be like, you have to lead people the right way. You can always do your best to be better, kind of, and don't let people be entitled and go into the wrong direction. Give them loving notes, like Suleiman. Like, this is really sweet. These words went to Prince Darling's heart. He realized the true affection and faithfulness of his old tutor, for the first time reproached himself for all his evil deeds. At the same instant he felt all his anger melting away, and he began quickly to think over his past life, and to admit that his punishment was not more than he had deserved. He left off tearing at the iron bars of the cage in which he was shut up, and became as gentle as a lamb. Sorry. The hunters who had caught him took him to a great menagerie, where he was chained up among all the other wild beasts, and he determined to show his sorrow for his past bad behavior by being gentle and obedient to the man who had to take care of him. Unfortunately, this man was very rough and unkind. Though the poor monster was quite quiet, he often beat him without rhyme or reason when he happened to be in a bad temper. One day, when his keeper was asleep, a tiger broke its chain and flew at him to eat him up. Prince Darling, who saw what was going on, at first felt quite pleased to think that he should be delivered from his persecutor, but soon thought better of it and wished that he were free. I would return good for evil, he said to himself, and save the unhappy man's life. He had hardly wished this when his iron cage flew open, and he rushed to the side of the keeper, who was awake and was defending himself against the tiger. When he saw the monster had got out, he gave himself up for lost, but his fear was soon changed to joy, for the monster threw itself upon the tiger and very soon killed it, and then came and crouched at the feet of the man it had saved. I mean, I would have gone with tiger, because the tiger doesn't deserve to be beaten either, and there's multiple animals that would have been beaten, and who says that that life isn't worth living? I don't know if it's worth interjecting. I don't know. Anyway, drop in the comments, who would you save? Overcome with gratitude, the keeper stopped to caress the strange creature which had done him such a great service. But suddenly a voice said in his ear, "A good action should never go unrewarded." And at the same instant the monster disappeared, and he saw at his feet only a pretty little dog. Prince Darling, delighted by the change, frisked about the keeper, showing his joy in every way he could, and the man, taking him up in his arms, carried him to the king, to whom he told the whole story. For the queen said she would like to have this wonderful little dog, so I guess Suleiman has a wife, and the prince would have been very happy in his new home if he could have forgotten that he was a man and a king. I never would have guessed the pretty little dogs to take over the stories. I never would have guessed so many of these to have pretty little dogs, but I should have. It makes sense. Anyway, he would have liked it if he had forgotten that he was a man and a king. The queen petted and took care of him, but she was so afraid that he would get too fat that she consulted the court physician, who said that he was to be fed only upon bread, and was not to have much even of that. Oh no! So the poor Prince Darling was terribly hungry all day long, but he was very patient about it. That sucked. One day, when they gave him his little loaf for breakfast, he thought he would like to eat it out in the garden, so he took it up in his mouth and trotted away toward a brook that he knew of a long way from the palace. But he was surprised to find that the brook was gone, and where it had been stood a great house that seemed to be built of gold and precious stones. Numbers of people splendidly dressed were going into it, and sounds of music and dancing and feasting could be heard from the windows. But what seemed very strange was that those people who came out of the house were pale and thin, and their clothes were torn and hanging in rags about them. Some fell down dead as they came out, before they had time to get away. Others crawled farther with great difficulty, while others again lay on the ground, fainting with hunger, and begged a morsel of bread from those who were going into the house. But they could not so much as look at the poor creatures. Prince Darling went up to a young girl who was trying to eat a few blades of grass, she was so hungry. Touched with compassion, he said to himself, "I am very hungry, but I shall not die of starvation before I get my dinner. If I give my breakfast to this poor creature, perhaps I may save her life." So he laid his piece of bread in the girl's hand, and saw her eat it up eagerly. She soon seemed to be quite well again, and the prince, delighted to have been able to help her, was thinking of going home to the palace when he heard a great outcry, and turning round saw Celia, who was being carried against her will into the great house. Not Celia, the A+ woman. For the first time the prince regretted that he was no longer the monster. Then he would have been able to rescue Celia. Now he could only bark feebly at the people who were carrying her off, and try to follow them, but they chased and kicked him away. He determined not to quit the place until he knew what had become of Celia, and blamed himself for what had befallen her. Alas, he said to himself, I am furious with the people who are carrying Celia off, but isn't that exactly what I did myself? And if I had not been prevented, did I not intend to be still more cruel to her? He was interrupted by a noise above his head. Someone was opening a window, and he saw with delight that it was Celia herself, who came forward and threw out a plate of most delicious-looking food. Then the window was shut again, and Prince Darling, who had nothing to eat all day, thought he might as well make the opportunity of getting something. He ran forward to begin, but the young girl whom he had given his bread gave a cry of terror, took him in her arms, saying, "Don't touch it, my poor little dog. That house is a palace of pleasure, and everything that comes out of it is poisoned." At the same time a voice said, "You see, a good action always brings its reward." And the prince found himself changed into a beautiful white dove. He remembered that white was the favorite color of the Fairy of Truth, so no wonder he was a little crusty white dog. Anyway, and began to hope that he might at last win back her favor. But just now his first care was for Celia, and rising into the air he flew round and round the house until he saw an open window. Of course, rule of 3 again. He has to change again. He has to keep improving. Monster, dog, dove, and then he'll be a man after that. Unless they go to 5. Sometimes they'll go to 5. That can be the next strongest number, but that's a bit much. Okay. First care was for Celia, and rising into the air he flew round and round the house until he saw an open window, but he searched through every room in vain. No trace of Celia was to be seen. And the prince, in despair, determined to search through the world till he found her. He flew on and on for several days till he came to a great desert, where he saw a cavern, and to his delight there sat Celia, sharing the simple breakfast of an old hermit. Overjoyed to have found her, Prince Darling perched upon her shoulder, trying to express by his caresses how glad he was to see her again, and Celia, surprised and delighted by the tameness of this pretty white dove, stroked it softly, and said, though she never thought of its understanding her, "I accept the gift that you make me of yourself, and I will love you always." "Take care what you are saying, Celia," said the old hermit. "Are you prepared to keep that promise?" "Indeed, I hope so, my sweet shepherdess," said the prince, who was at that moment restored to his natural shape. Yay! "You promise to love me always. Tell me that you really mean what you said, or I shall have to ask the fairy to give me back the form of the dove which pleased you so much." Aw, okay, so to be fair, he's not like, "Yeah, you better love me." He's at the place of like, "Aw, I'll be whatever pleases you right now. I'll get the fairy. We'll sort this out." "You need not be afraid that she will change her mind," said the fairy, throwing off the hermit's robe in which she had been disguised and appearing before them. "Celia has loved you ever since she first saw you, only she would not tell you while you were so obstinate and naughty. Now you have repented and mean to be good. You deserve to be happy, and so she may love you as much as she likes." Oh, this enemies to lovers. Here we go. Celia and Prince Darling threw themselves at the fairy's feet, and the prince was never tired of thanking her for her kindness. Celia was delighted to hear how sorry he was for his past follies and misdeeds. Exactly. And promised to love him as long as she lived. "Rise, my children," said the fairy, "and I will transport you." Why not Zoidberg? Whoop, 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 whoop. I love Zoidberg. Welcome. You're catching us right at the end of this story. Unless you have been here and you're just now dropping in, that's fine. "I will transport you to the palace, and Prince Darling shall have back again the crown he forfeited by his bad behavior." While she was speaking, they found themselves in Suleiman's hall, and his delight was great at seeing his dear master once more. He gave up the throne joyfully to the prince, and remained always the most faithful of his subjects. Celia and Prince Darling reigned for many years, but he was so determined to govern worthily and to do his duty that his ring, which he took to wearing again, never pricked him severely. So it still pricked him little bits to warn him again and now and then. I like that that's still human. He's not going to be suddenly perfect. Honestly, this is a really good story. This is a really good moral. I love this one. Prince Darling was really good. It really had one of the best morals I've seen. And as someone I've done lots of times when I've worked with children and I've tried to teach young men to be, better men, especially in this era. It is so difficult. It is really good to have a story like this. Yeah, well, I mean, you have to start somewhere dark so that you can get to the happy ending. If you didn't know, that's the circle of comedy and tragedy. If you start with a wedding, you will end unhappily. If you start unhappily, you will end with a wedding. If you analyze certain classics, that's usually how they go. These older fairy tales, sometimes they circle around a couple times, kind of a thing. Like Cinderella, they were happy, then there was a death, and then there was a new wedding, and then it went dark. But all of that happens very densely in the front, so that's clearly, that's just the backstory. That's not the active story. So then if we start right after the wedding, then we're starting in the dark. And then we can go on. Yeah. Anyway, that was Prince Darling. Very sweet moral to that story. I'm quite happy with it. Wow. Okay. I don't think I'll read another one tonight. I think I should go to bed. But I'm happy to chat a little while if there's people still up for chatting. Yeah, to some degree, I don't want to gamble anymore tonight. I just want to move on. Have the energy to deal with the bullshit later. The name Darling. Yeah, it's a bit interesting. Not as something odd as the history of Whittington, but yeah. Yes, chat with me, please, if you wish, if you have things to ponder. Aha. You don't have anything to ponder? That's surprising from you, Dimdo. You always have some sort of question to just throw out. Okay. Looking at the next stories that I'll end up doing. Who is Raven? I've been kind of holding off properly talking about myself since I still don't have my antlers, and it's somewhat bugging me that way. But I am going to be updating my about page soon with more info that that Violet Spellcraft, who many of my followers found me through, that she set me up, and that I know her from the forest. When she came to the forest, I was there, an acquaintance of the witch that showed her the way. I know that Bunny Scrunkle, or whatever name, all that sort of nonsense, folks. That's a very short-looking one. Oh, and it's got all the apostrophes. Oh, that story is going to be a heck of a time to read. Oh my gosh. Sorry. But I'm going to be updating all the about. All the lore. Well, how do I find words? I will talk more freely when I am given a more direct answer because I know what is asked of me. When you ask me something broad, I'm set to start at the basic things. Who is Raven? Well, a dear woman. Who is Raven? Everyone knows me through this. That is the way you might immediately answer. Like, who's Dumda? Your first responses might be, well, I come from here. The people I know, the family here. What are you? You might say your race, and I don't mean that in skin color, which is not real. I mean type of being. If you were a witch, if you were a frog, you might say those sorts of things. And then you would end up saying the next things. Eventually. But there's so much to a person, so where do you start? So that's why I started with those things. How did I become interested in story reading? Oh, something stuck. Well, I love stories. I've always really loved stories, storytelling. And there's a good deal of connecting back to personal histories, ancestries that were sort of, taken away, outlawed, forced into being whitewashed and such. You lose some degree of that all happening in the areas near me for a long, long time. That sort of thing will make you kind of wonder how stories have changed, make you want to know the stories that you were told you couldn't know. So then it's also very interesting to note whenever something is whitewashed. See, you start with what you are. You're a blacksmith. And you're a captain of a paintball team. Those are what you are's. I started with, I am this. FairyTales in particular. Well, first off, there's no copyright. No one can legally get mad at me. When you're still nervous about that sort of thing, this is a safe choice. But also, there are so many different stories that are widely understood to not be really real, but we can all kind of ponder and take meanings to them. But I've also, these are some of my favorite things. These are things that I'll ponder on my own quite a lot. Ah, okay. I get what you mean. Yes. We all love a good ponder in this little group, I think. If you don't, tell us to shut up. Maybe I'll do an intentional couple of streams. I'll stop pondering and interrupting. Just for you, I will make sure there's at least a couple of those. But, where was I? FairyTales over other things. They're just so much more interesting, and they say so much about the people around you. And I find it interesting the way words have changed their meanings in certain ways. And I want to analyze some of this and understand some cultures a little bit too. You mean the ones where I don't ponder and I just shut up and say the stuff and don't interrupt things? Well, funny you say that. There will be a couple of those where I'll be reading a story that I've written and I'll make it more like an audiobook and less like a chatting. So that will exist at some point. Yes, it's fascinating to see how stories have changed over time and what people choose. I have always had that problem too. I learned to talk very, very young, unnaturally young. Apparently people saw me with my mother. Well, they heard me before they saw me, but they understood that, like, oh, that mother must have a small child with her. And then they saw me and they were like, that is way too small a child to be talking that much. How in the fuck? Yeah, well, quiet is not bad, Fetster. Quiet is lovely too. I'm sure that Dumda, if he really does have a problem with shutting up, has probably had people push him to do that, and as I have. And then we feel like, wow, I wish I could be quieter more naturally. Which last statement? Sorry, at this point I don't know which one was last. Yeah, it's no fun, but very small. Ah, okay. Early talker. There you go. Never been very good at listening? Well, then I hope I'm teaching you something, Dimda. Listen to my stories, damn it. Well, yeah, so for some reason, side character Mouse Sniffles, Tom and Jerry. I don't know them. I want to look those up. Or a character Mouse Sniffles. It's one character, right? Sniffles the mouse. Tom and Jerry. Sniffles. No, I love it. I'll Google it. Oh my gosh, I know that guy. I know who you're. Yeah, that dude. I remember him. Or her. Or whatever. He. Him. Okay. Okay. It's a little gray mouse with a diaper on it. That's the character, yeah. Yeah. It's also always very interesting when people are mad at someone for being annoying. 'Cause at least when someone's not trying to be a pest to someone, when they're just slightly not what you prefer, to be angry at them for being annoying is some of the most unkind, unempathetic stuff that I can imagine. Like, I understand having a pet peeve and being annoyed and not wanting to be around someone that chews loudly or something. But when they're not trying to, or when they can't help that their face makes noise as opposed to their mouth is wide open as they chew, it just feels so unkind. And at that point, yeah, good for you for just saying, heck yeah, I'm annoying. Deal with it. 'Cause, like, I gotta deal with it too. You want me to change? We all want me to change, bud. Get in line. I'm first in line. Like, too bad. Ugh. That's great, the Tom and Jerry things. Yeah, that's definitely good times. Nostalgic. Those sorts. Yeah. Well, it reminds me of the story we just read, because one of the primary things the fairy wanted to teach him out of was getting absurdly angry. Being slow to anger is one of the most lovely messages from my, like, other heritages, like, doing your best to keep that at bay so that you know when it's unreasonable is really important. Part of the really good moral lesson from that one, because the first thing she needed him to do was to be less angry, and when he was less angry, that's when he started to get his first like, changes and fixings. He had to lose his anger before he could hear Suleiman, and then when he could hear Suleiman, then he started to actually get better, and then he changed out of the beast into the dog. And then it was the next and the next thing. Yeah, we always lose our patience, but it... Yeah. Exactly. Thank you, Nick Cage Nightwind. The towering over them, that just sounds like, I'm sorry, but that's put your measuring sticks away. I don't give a fuck about size, everybody. Calm down. Although as someone that is often shorter than someone else, it is so infuriating that because I am small, they do not feel my anger that is reasonable to have in that case, or they do not feel that I should be respected as well just because I'm smaller. Having height and using it like it is a weapon, I hope you use it respectfully, responsibly. It is a big thing sometimes. I'm so grateful I've been blessed with calm temperament. Yes. Who are they kidding? Well, you'll have to see me. Without my antler times, I am not able to impress upon someone that they need to be respectful enough. Partially because I know that I cannot just turn into a Karen and scream and be an awful piece of shit. And I will never be that. But also because if I had height, I could be just as calm as I am, and they would step the fuck back. But because I am small, they are dicks. Anyway. Very fair. Medical reasons, yeah. It's very good to use responsibly against people that have so much value to it when you don't personally ascribe the value to it like they do. Maybe I'm short, maybe I'm not, but I'm just very aware of the people that when they are tall and they put their power in their height and they don't care when someone's smaller than them. Oh, I don't like it. Well, I'm quite curious about all that, what the medical intervention would have been, but I hope that your medical reasons and things are all sorted out now. Just find yourself another friend, can roll around. Yeah. At different times in my life, I have had those tall friends, but now I'm in Emerald Lake, and honestly, sometimes I am the tall one, and I very much like being that. It feels very good, but I am not always the tall one. Well, that is good. Oh, wow. I'm sure there are many people who might want those sorts of things themselves, but I'm sure you had to deal with the symptoms or any hiccups that go along with that. Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah. That makes sense to why now that would be the issue. Okay. Well, then I hope that all of your medical troubles are never a problem again, and I'm glad that it's sorted for you now. You don't really care about how you measure. Yeah. I will say I am skeptical of anyone that says that is of a male persuasion, mostly because enough times I have heard someone say that. I've been even misled by a young man saying very jokingly moments of like, and I'm 6 foot. I'm like, oh yeah, those jokes are so stupid, or those people that care about it, that's so funny, you're so right. But then he kept saying that joke a lot. And it was clear it was not really that much a joke. Aw, that one is sorted. That's good. Well, then I wish you luck with everything else. I'm sure that'll be better soon. I hope. Yeah. Oh, it's just too classic of the times, I guess, right now. We love a good short king that gives no shits, though. That's the real energy we need. Anyway, okay. I'm very glad for this little extra chat. Unless someone has a specific little thing. For real? For real for the short kings? Yeah. Oh, always. I hope people enjoy that I'm doing the cozy and then still manage the very sudden insanity, because sometimes these stories, like, they really just are insane, and you cannot expect me to be just totally chill and fine and not say something. Thank you for the affiliate. Congratulations. Thank you. And yes, all the short kings and queens and thems. All of thems. I need a frog. I just hope I'm not turning away anyone by suddenly going from cozy to, oh my god, what the fuck was that? Oh my god. These people are so stupid. Oh my god. Like that, all that. I hope that it's okay. Before you still don't know my length. You still don't know my height. Technically. Goodness. You love those tangents? Oh, great. Okay. Yeah. Tell me plainly if you have a particular note. I will be able to discern if I want to take your notes or not. But more input is better than less. So I love for the input. Thank you for your support of those tangents. I will note it. Okay. Yes, I fully intend to do rating at the end of streams, but my problem is I do not know many streams. I do not know many people, so I think soon I will just start to do extremely random drop-ins on other ASMR streamers. It will be a full gamble. That would be great, Vetster. That would honestly be so helpful, because I have so many other things that I need to keep going, and I only have so many spoons. And in fact, I'm kind of nervous about, will I be able to make the long journey for food and grocery things tomorrow in time to come back for stream? I don't want to cancel tomorrow and all that. Before I have even done any of the research into other streamers yet, so suggestions would be so helpful. I would love that. I like that for you. That's what I'm doing. Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Giving rates. That would be great. I love to have it. And it's also something I can ask of Vi, because she raids in to us every once in a while, but she sends in just a little before us. So the same people that she raids to are probably okay for me to raid to by the time I'm done. Get someone who matches. Oh, okay, great. You know what? The two of you, I know I'm going to put Vi on as a mod soon, and I will probably put some of you who are always chatty and here as the next ones, because you guys have been so helpful. If you are up for it, I will do that. How old is my Twitch account? My Twitch account. I think my Twitch account is a little bit older than my proper streaming, but it's like, it's a month old or something like that. I don't know. Because I just started, but I had Vi helping me out, telling me all the things I need to do, so that's how I got affiliate real quick and got everything all sorted. Yeah. Okay, so I will mods fet thumbed and Cage Nightwind. I'm just putting you, if that's how that works, that you're like approved to do it. It doesn't mean that you have to do it. You know what I mean? You don't have to do anything. I'm just kind of doing that so that I note that, like, if anybody else sees you guys, they're like, hey, we're the cool people. If that's not how that works, it's okay. Violet will be teaching me soon, so she'll be able to, like, tell me if that was an okay thing to plan. Yeah, your schedule is all good. I will never expect you to do anything. I kind of said it before. You guys owe me nothing. I love the help where you give it, and I will do my best to give you the room and the support all the way back. Yeah, you can't get raids. You're right. That's something that Vi said when someone said to try and raid her. You're very right. I need to check that out. Down to help out. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Yes. Thank you. Salute, rat. I'll need to make a salute frog. That's what I'll be doing. I'll be making my own versions of these little cute frogs, and I'll make them do all the new things. I think that's my step 1, is all the frogs. Oh. If I raid tonight, my first raiding in, I want to stick around for just a little while. And I am, like I said, I'm going to have to do a trek tomorrow for groceries. So, how about tomorrow night? Let's do it tomorrow night, not tonight. And I will sign off in just a couple of moments. Keep them in line, yes, yes. Absolutely, that's why there will be many nods. Okay, well, thank you so much, friends. No, sure. Okay, well then how about whenever the next time you're in, Fetster, we'll do it the next time you're in. I'm not in any big rush about things. Although I will be taking 2 weeks off, probably it'll be. And end of February. I will be traveling. I will be going up to the north. Ooh. I've enjoyed you guys being here. Thank you. Okay. Good night, taking notes. Good night, everyone. Sleep well or enjoy your day. And I'll see you. I'll see you in the chat, hopefully, the next streams. Good night. All right. Bye-bye.